Welcome to the January 6th meeting of the Town of Camden Select Board. Our meetings are live streamed on YouTube at Town of Camden, Maine. And if you wish to participate remotely, you'll note that our Zoom format has changed to a webinar format. So if you are interested, you will need to be admitted by the administrator of the Zoom platform, and we will do our best to acknowledge you and allow you to participate as you so desire. So first on our agenda, as always, is public comment on non-agenda items. Is there anyone here with a non-agenda item? Anybody want to make something up? No. Okay.
Don't tempt me.
Great. No. All right. Anyone on the board have a non-agenda item they'd like to? Okay. All right. Moving right along, approval of our minutes from the December 2nd meeting, which was ably chaired by Allison. Included in the packet. Any additions, deletions, corrections?
I move to approve the meetings as documented.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? 4, and I will abstain because I did not participate. Thank you. Consent agenda, we've got a review of the victual licenses for Camden Birchwood, which is Albatross, DBA Albatross, Longrain, and Zoot, and the request for closure of Atlantic Avenue for Winterfest on January 31st. So if there are no discussion regarding those, we can let the consent agenda go through as noted. And then we have public hearing on 2 liquor licenses. They're establishments that are under 5 years that require a public hearing. So the format for a public hearing is that we will hear first from the applicant if the applicant is present, and then seek comments from any other persons wishing to comment or ask questions directed through the chair. And if you do wish to speak, come to the microphone and state your name and address. And then we will discuss the application and decide which action we wish to take. So we've got Albatross at 115 Elm Street for a renewal of Class 1 restaurant liquor license, and Cafe Louis at 50 Elm Street for a Class 1 restaurant liquor license. Is there anyone here wishing to speak on either of those? Seeing none. Anyone from the board wish to comment on either of those license applications? Seeing none, I'll take a, what do I take?
A motion to approve.
A motion
So
to
moved.
approve. So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay, checking them off. Select board member reports. Anyone have anything they'd like to report? Yeah.
I'll
Allison,
start with the
please.
good news. If you've ever tried to use a credit card at the transfer station over the years and either been denied or found the process to be extremely slow, that has been revamped now, and now you can use a credit card without having to feel really bad for Jeremy in the gatehouse. There is a normal fee of 3% or something. We are passing along the fees that we have to the users, but yeah, that's been requested for a very long time and been hard to accomplish over there.
Excellent. Anything else? Great. Anyone else? Ken?
Yes. Thank you. We just passed the request for closure of Atlantic Avenue. I just wanted to draw attention to Winterfest, which is the last day of this month, over on Atlantic Avenue, hosted by the Camden Public Library. And it is a wonderful event, so everybody's welcome. Oh, and there, as I understand, there are going to be 10 ice carving teams. There are 10 blocks of ice. So far, only 7 people have signed up. So if you were looking for a chance to carve ice, there is an opportunity.
The snowmaker team going to go out and carve ice.
The Cemetery Association met this afternoon, and they are on track for their regular business. Oh, they're working on the budget because we're approaching budget season. They'll be cleaning the next 3 sections of cemetery as they choose 1 or 2 or 3 sections per year, so they're working on that. They are also working on a GIS map, and that's about to go online, maybe online already, but it's kind of still up in the air, still working on it, the GIS map of what's in the cemetery. And they're taking the first steps, towards discussing the green burial idea. And the first step will be to locate and map the vernal pools, because that's a critical, you can't mess with vernal pools, right? But the cost to do that is something like $8,000, and there is nothing in the budget yet. So they will approach that in the budget. So right now, that's not in the works, but that is the very first step. It's a long process to achieving a green burial in the town of Camden. That's it. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Ken. Keep us up to date on that. Chris, anything you'd like to report?
Nothing. Thank you.
Okay, and Chriso? All right, and I'm good, so we'll move on to town manager's report.
So the new Harbor software is up and running smoothly. The portal is linked on the Harbor page of our website. We are talking about putting it on the front so it's easier to access in this sort of initial phase where we're trying to direct everybody to use it. So provide access to Harbor fee information, applications for moorings, floats, and it also has details about the pump out services and the Harbor and Waterways Ordinance. And you can also click a link on this to view the wait list for finger floats and also the inner and outer harbor floats and moorings. So it's making, everything a lot easier to maneuver both for the staff who administer all of the harbor infrastructure. And I think they've gotten really good feedback from the few users who have had a chance to test it out. In general, the finance office is gearing up for budget season. So Jody Hansen's working on budget details that will be turned over to department heads. And the process from there is that they come up, with their budgets, and then we consolidate this and have discussions about, what's sort of finalized into the budget that I put out. So that's the process has started. We're going through it, and before we all know it, it'll be budget season. So our new town clerk, Julia Merrill's working to close out and finalize details from the November election that's required by the state. So the reports are asking a lot of good questions, and Julia's doing a great job kind of figuring out how to go through the process of getting the information that she needs to the state, and also, coming up with her own system for organizing elections moving forward. So from the code enforcement officer, in his first time in the 4 years that he's been the CEO, he's reporting that building permits have leveled off. And he believes this can be attributed to the fact that there's so much building work going on in town that the local pool of contractors is, pretty exhausted in what they can do and what they can take on, and just not really able to take on new projects that would generate additional permits. So he's really only seen permits for work by contractors outside the area coming in at this point, not a lot of the locals, because they're just completely scheduled to the teeth. So in the assessing office, they're getting ready to start the business personal property tax audits, which includes research for new personal property accounts, and also starting to mail the existing accounts. So personal property taxes are levied against all furniture, fixtures, computers, software, machinery, and other business equipment assets. And in order to get the process started, the assessing office mails a request to all the businesses to get these lists and get all of that information by February. And the filing deadline is May 1st. So more information, also requests for a filing extension can be found on the assessing department page of the town's website. And in the Planning and Development Office, we talked about this a little before, but the Mid-Coast Council of Governments received a planning and development grant, which Camden's participating in for traffic studies and traffic safety initiatives. So the grant is around $123,000, and there's a very small match from the town. And we have a lot of information about that program, but it's really looking at what are the areas that are part of the regional transit system that are causing pinch points, conflicts, particularly between motorists and pedestrians, but also, crash data as well. So looking at the region comprehensively in all the different areas where there's, some sort of issue and how we can better plan for transit and traffic. And, one of sort of the main directions that this seems to be taking is transit system. And is there any ability to revisit that again? And that's been just a very, very difficult, sort of initiative to move forward in the Mid-Coast. And there were people working on it, 10, 15 years ago that kind of got close to figuring something out. And then there were changes to ride reimbursements for Medicare that made that infeasible. So they're kind of taking another run at it.
Like public transportation, that's what you mean by transit?
Public transportation, Yep, public transit. So preparation, the final preparations are underway for the 35th annual U.S. National Toboggan Championships at the Snow Bowl, which is going to be held from February 6th to 8th. So the souvenirs are being delivered, the new poster is in hand, and team registrations are really strong. So as of this afternoon, both the 2-person and 3-person divisions were sold out, with less than 65 spots available still for the 4-person teams to register. We're also looking for sponsors. That's, it's strong this year, but we're always, looking for, other community members or businesses, organizations to help with the event. It's one of our main fundraisers for the Snow Bowl. And I think everybody just agrees on top of that. It's really fun event. It's a, sort of landmark event for the town of Camden. Looking great for that. Very excited because, we've had a cold winter so far, so we don't have to worry about the pond not freezing. Sorry.
Wow.
Knock on wood, we don't have to worry about the pond not freezing. So anyway, those are my updates. Hope I didn't curse us.
And the Rawson Street Bridge, I don't know if you've had an update about that
Thank you
since
very
the
much.
last meeting.
Yes, the Rawson Avenue Bridge has been delivered and it is installed.
Are there any plans at some point to improve how the road ends right around there?
So that's something that we're working on with MDOT. So both having like a turnaround at the end, as well as bollards or something. So it makes it, I know you can't drive onto the bridge as it is because it chokes up, but still we don't want to, any warning to let people know that it's not a vehicular bridge and you can't drive that way is going to be helpful. So
They said that's a requirement when I asked. That's why they've left those barriers in place for now, because we don't yet meet the
right.
specifications that MDOT has for stopping cars from attempting.
Into a river.
But it's all connected and secure for
Yes.
walking across. And
Absolutely.
I don't have to worry that I'm going to,
Just doesn't look as nice as it
that
will.
sign put me off. I was like, am I going to fall in the river?
Yeah,
Okay.
Nobody will follow.
Okay.
Pedestrians are very welcome.
I'm glad. Yeah, it looks beautiful. It was so cool to see them putting it in place with that gigantic crane on the windiest day, the windiest, coldest day of the winter. It was really quite something to witness down there. Are you all set?
That's it.
Great, thank you, Audra. Discussion items. We start off with a review of automatic fire, EMS mutual aid assumptions, and resource availability. And I'm assuming that
Yes.
the chief
Yep.
is going to,
Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
kind of
okay, kick us off.
kick us off,
All right.
and the chief is available to answer questions. So to start this, this has really kind of come about. We had an incident where on December 19th, the Hannaford had a structure fire. And so in those instances, a number of departments are dispatched to go to the fire call. So town of Camden, Rockport, Lincolnville, and Hope. So one of the municipalities' departments didn't show up, and there was no communication about them not showing up. And we have, sort of an informal agreement under the Knox County Mutual Aid Association about how this is supposed to work. It's informal. People voluntarily participate in it. So I guess, given it's as serious as it comes, a structure fire at Hannaford, it's the most highly used commercial building in our 4-town area, arguably. It got us thinking about, is sort of an informal agreement the best way to sort of continue, providing fire service, because we're all highly dependent on one another. As we all know, our departments aren't large enough to generally respond to structure fires on their own. We're all interdependent on one another. So given, the fact that we might not be able to take for granted that everybody's going to show up when called, maybe we need to start looking at formalizing things a little bit more and having it be looser and informal. Might be inadvertently putting us at a level of risk that, we all decide that we don't want to accept. So that's really to kind of kick off the conversation.
How many calls in the last 10 or so years have we had for mutual aid, and how many times has any of our partners not shown up?
I don't know the answer to that. Chris, do you have any? He probably can't give you exact numbers, but.
I can't give you exact numbers.
You want to turn on your microphone there?
I said 10 years. I can't give exact numbers. I did 2025. 87 times we provided mutual aid and 22 times we received mutual aid in 2025.
How many times did the department not show up when called?
Once.
Once out of 30 some odd in the past year, right?
Once out of 87 last year.
Right, once out of 87. It was mentioned it was a structure fire. Was a second call put out to the towns? I don't know how the pager system sort of
Yeah.
works.
So the way that we have it set up, the way that many towns and Knox County have it set up is that if the communication center gets the indication that it is a building fire, then the way the system is set up down there, automatically Hope, Lincolnville, and Rockport get added to the call. So
So do they just, or is it routine? They're just called out once for a potential structure fire, or are there multiple calls?
Nope.
Just
it
once.
just happens once, unless we need additional help, and then we call the communication center and ask for more help.
What ended up being the nature of the structure fire at Hannaford?
The call was for a structure fire with smoke in the building, and there was a fire or a burned out HVAC unit up on the roof. So there was smoke rolling down into the vestibule and into the main part of the store.
From a AC system that had
Yeah, like an
Probably.
electrical mechanical.
like a belt failure type thing, or something else?
Something else.
Something else.
So
It was enough that Hannaford evacuated the building and closed the store.
Mhm.
So are there
Wisely.
instances where you would put out a call and you get a response from another participating municipality that says, we can't show up? So that, but you know that they're not going to show up. So you're not looking for them to show up. But in this instance, you did not get that response.
Correct.
And it was your expectation that they were going to.
Correct.
So is there a system in place where you would get a response to say, we're busy fighting a fire over, or something, we can't show up. Does that happen?
That's likely not the case. And I
Okay.
think that's, when this incident happened, we had a bunch of internal conversations over that weekend before I ever decided to have a conversation with Audra. And, we were like, is this important enough to bring to the town manager's attention, to your attention? What does it mean? And what are we trying to accomplish from it? And what we came up with was, yes, it's important enough that we brought it to Audra's attention, to your attention. And what we need to improve the mutual aid system. That's my takeaway.
So
This,
I guess this is sort of like our response and planning assumptions for automatic mutual aid are, based on the idea that when people are called, they're going to show up. And if they aren't going to show up, they'll let us know so that,
Right.
and that's really important to incident command for figuring out what are my resources going into
Right,
this?
that's what I was getting at. How do you-
Yeah. So I
was
guess
there-
it's kind of, when we were kind of kicking it around, we're like, well, is this like an operational thing? But the more we thought about it, it really comes down to, having a mutual aid agreement that's very loose and has been administered by a group of fire chiefs through the Knox County Mutual Aid Association. So it really is kind of like a governance issue, because we're finding now that that this happened, that we might not be able to plan to respond to incidents based on our old assumptions. So that kind of brings us to a point where we feel like we need to speak to all of you about, okay, given that might be the reality moving forward, what's a different way to structure these relationships so that, there is some level of certainty, or it's a little more formal than something that's administered by a group of the chiefs. And when it
So
breaks
are there
down.
models among other municipalities that we could follow? Does Rockland have a more concrete agreement, or is there a group of municipalities that have a more concrete agreement, or is it always handled in this sort of handshake sort of relationship?
There are some that are much more robust, like there are, agreements that are interlocal agreements. So that's all voted on at town meeting or by the city council. And, that has some real legality and teeth to it. There are other agreements that would be sort of administered through the select board level. And that also has another layer of oversight by having elected officials involved. So there's a lot of, this is kind of like the most informal way of, structuring one of these sort of mutual aid associations.
I mean, given obviously, this is the one incident that we're hearing about. Do you think that we're at a point that that was a critical enough event that it really requires that we revisit this, or that we stiffen up the agreement at this point?
So interestingly enough, the association had a discussion about changing their bylaws. Changing the bylaws takes a long time. It was
When you say the association, that
Knox
is,
County Mutual Aid Association.
Okay.
And is that, when you say Knox County, as opposed to Hope, Lincolnville, Rockport, and Camden,
So
or not, that's obviously not all of Knox County, so what,
the Knox County Mutual Aid Association is made up of the fire departments of the towns in Knox County plus Waldoboro and Lincolnville.
and so when a call goes out for a structure fire, is it expected that everybody in Knox County responds?
No. Those.
How do we know
those
that it's-
dispatch protocols are set up through the communication center.
So what makes
so
it
kind of-
that the expectation is that it's Lincolnville, Hope, and Rockport?
Because
That shows
because conversations have taken place that's what the expectation is.
So it's just a conversation
And
thing? I'm not trying to be difficult, I truly just don't understand.
So it's set up in the communication center that's what gets dispatched at the same time.
and
If
it's
there's
the
a fire in
contiguous
Camden, it's
towns.
automatically those three other, it's obviously Camden, and then those three
Or
other
if
towns.
Lincolnville, then the same four would go.
Yep.
Rockport, the same
there's
four.
if there's a building fire in Rockland, Rockport, and Camden are automatically sent at the same time.
Oh,
every time there's a building fire.
but Rockland doesn't come to us when there's a,
It needs to move to another level of alarm. Before
Rockland.
except for the downtown area, Rockland does respond with their ladder truck to the downtown area,
is this
specifically.
all
Main
written
Street.
down somewhere?
It is, yep. It's
Is
all-
that what you're asking us to revisit?
No, we're not asking you to revisit those, necessarily those. Well, I think we do need to revisit those, some of those, in terms of the automatic aspects of them, what we're getting from those communities. But what I think we need to do is, as Audra said, the Knox County Mutual Aid Association has this agreement that was started back in the 50s. So it's basically the same agreement that was set 75 years now. When I first started working here, I was concerned with how the association was set up and what type of agreement that is. Typically, somebody signs that agreement. I've never signed one. I've never seen an original copy of anybody that has signed one. And what I'm more used to is having it be an interlocal agreement, which is municipality with another municipality rather than fire chief to fire chief as a handshake. Susan asked, so I did a little bit of research, and I have City of Biddeford and Town of Kennebunk, a interlocal mutual aid agreement. Town of Raymond and Town of Wyndham mutual aid agreement that's signed by the town managers.
Are there
And-
clauses that really make it more
I mean,
clear
from
what
my
the
perspective,
responsibility is?
yeah, from my perspective, it should be a community to community agreement. Municipal to municipal, not an association, a nonprofit association that, we identified ourselves at our October meeting that in the change in that bylaw that we've weakened the agreement because it started to become more focused on providing education and training. And the Washington deputy fire chief said, we've weakened this agreement. It doesn't even really say mutual aid anymore and that we will do this. So I really think that it needs to be an interlocal agreement between communities.
But we've had one problem out of 87. What was the indication from the group? I imagine you must have had a conversation with them to find out if there are any extenuating circumstances, or what was the deal? What did you have a conversation with the group that didn't show up, and what was their response? Did they take responsibility for it? Did they slough it off? What was the deal?
Well, it was a planned departmental event that they had. that
Were you aware that they were having a planned departmental event?
I was aware when I talked to them 3 days later. I was not aware prior to, no.
Did Camden have an event? Did they make the other towns know when they have a department event?
So it's typical. So,
Okay.
when Chief Woodward retired in Rockport,
Mhm.
there was an arrangement made that so that they could attend, the Rockport firefighters could attend the retirement, and we provided coverage.
Mhm.
Similar thing happened when Travis Ford's service happened. Rockland provided coverage for Rockport. So yes, those types of conversations do happen. Yes.
What was the conversation that you had with the agency that didn't show up? Did they take responsibility for not showing up or having poor communication or anything?
Is it a
Did
good
they
idea?
acknowledge that their communication could have been better?
Do we want to, I want to.
I'm curious about this because
I don't-
otherwise we're talking about a single instance of 87, and that usually is not very material. So I'm trying to figure out, before coming to us, what happened at the fire chief level on this, and did the other group take responsibility? Are we making something out of something that really isn't all that important, or is this just something that happened? So now either we want to make big note of it, or B, that, oh, we've had a realization, even though it's only 1 out of 87 and 1 out of I don't know how many over the last 10 years that it's occurred. Is it a mountain of a molehill, or is it just an indicator?
I mean,
So
yeah,
I'm
is this
wondering,
something
first
we-
question
Okay, we
was.
got your question.
No,
Let the chief
excuse
answer.
me,
Oh, no,
ma'am.
you-
The first question is, and it wasn't yet answered, and I went on, I'm sorry. I usually am pretty brief. The first question is, did you have a conversation with the other group, and did they take responsibility for it?
Yes, no.
They did not take responsibility for not showing up.
No.
Well, okay, I'd like to, I think it's more important to bring it back to the fact that we've had some big changes in service models and fire and EMS pretty recently. And I would say that our old ways of providing mutual aid really haven't kept pace with those changes. So given the major changes in service models within our community, as well as neighboring community, it's a good time to revisit all of this. And, you know, we're not asking for you to pick a model tonight. We're not asking you to change anything tonight. We're just bringing this to your attention and asking you if you're comfortable with us sort of moving forward, having those conversations with our neighboring communities.
I mean, it seems to me that, yes, it has not happened, but it's highlighted probably some other things that were already identified in terms of communication between and because I had the same questions of Allison of like, wait, Knox County, but Fort Town, like how is, and so even that, because reading through the bylaws, there's nothing that lays out really what this is. So you say it's written like, yeah, I think that it definitely looks like it has highlighted an issue that needs to be dug into. So, I mean, that's regardless of which town didn't show up or how many times. It seems to me this is a pretty important communication chain that needs to be.
Yeah, you know, it's not our intent to lay blame. We're looking at to making improvements. I think that this mutual aid agreement, in order to protect the town of Camden, needs to be improved and strengthened. And that's part of my responsibility in the fire protection and prevention ordinance is to advise you when I think things need to be changed. And I think this mutual aid agreement needs to be strengthened. And I think it needs to be an interlocal agreement between communities, not an association that struggles to keep current.
I mean, I would venture to say that you probably have had this on your mind for some time, and that this event precipitated this conversation. And the expectation in this community about the level of service that we have grown to expect and value, and the respect that we have for you and your crew means that we have to revisit this. I would say that any language that you can bring to us that would help us move to solidify it, and, you know, it doesn't have to be carved in stone, but so that you know. I mean, when Audra told me about this, I was like, excuse me, what? I mean, your whole relationship is built on trust and knowing that there's somebody who's got your back when you go into a burning building. And if that is eroded, we're in trouble.
Another town administrator called me this morning, and that was basically the premise of his conversation with me.
Yeah, Allison.
I worry about interlocal agreements and the lack of flexibility that they provide. We are part of another interlocal agreement with the towns of Rockport and Hope and Lincolnville in the form of Midco Solid Waste, and it's very onerous the way that that is set up because all changes go to voters in all four towns, and I certainly don't want to get us into a situation where the voters in all four towns are micromanaging the way that fire chiefs and public safety officials are determining to respond to these things. It seems like if there's a reason to revisit all of this, it should certainly start with the other fire chiefs and whoever else is involved. I don't love the way that we're hyper-focusing on one incident, and that may just be the lack of knowledge that I have, and it seems to be a culture thing, a little bit of how you respond. I remember listening that night Actually, I very rarely listen to the scanner, almost never, but I remember thinking, geez, there's every fire truck in the 4 towns is now at Hannaford. And, you know, where does that leave? Do they ever say, well, we better leave some over here? I don't need, you know, I drove by and it didn't look like you could even fit another fire truck. I don't think the select board should be super involved in determining what is the right thing to do there, but I do want to know that the people that are professionals have revisited this from time to time to figure out what the right thing to do is. So I would hope that there would be conversations with the rest of the fire chiefs and whoever else, and that if something needs to come back to us, that it should. But I agree. I just don't like a little bit. It does feel a little bit like making a mountain out of a molehill. And I think for the most part, it's pretty amazing, the response that I see from all of the towns really being eager to show up. And so I just want to keep that relationship positive. And
Yeah, I would follow up on what Allison said, that as you said right at the beginning, that we are highly dependent on one another in the relationship between the fire departments and the towns. And one time out of the course of a year or several years, that's not a pattern. That's an incident. And I assume that you had serious discussions with all the other fire department chiefs on this incident, and that it won't happen again. I mean, it's clear to me that you all take your job so seriously, and you're so dedicated to the safety in our various towns, that I appreciate that there is such a thing that is functioning or has functioned informally. And I'm not sure that we need to go to the next step of more formality, but be waiting to hear more from you, Chris.
I having talked with the members of the executive board of the Mutual Aid Association after this happened, and getting their feedback, engaging what will happen within the association. It's part of why we're here. I think we need to take a look back and really revisit this. Allison, I hear what you say about the number of apparatus that respond, and we don't need numbers of apparatus, we need people, right? And that's part of what needs to be addressed. And that conversation happens and nothing really changes. So it's really, we need to take a more holistic look. And as Susan said, this is not I'm not trying to make a big deal out of one incident, but I'm looking at it in a holistic sense. And do we have effective mutual aid agreements in place? Are we protecting those folks back there? Are they adequately protected when they go to another community? And by that, I mean, if something happens to them, I'm sure that the town of Camden is going to stand behind them. But I would really like to see that in terms of something more than a Knox County Mutual Aid Association set of bylaws.
well, is there, so who's on that right now? Can that be
concerns me.
used as a vehicle? It seems like that's the association that we
No,
have.
they declined to get involved.
Who's they?
The Knox County Mutual Aid Association. So I guess I would,
I feel like we are not getting, there's like all these undertones here that we don't have the full. If there are other professionals in the industry that agree with this concern that this needs to be revisited, then I want to endorse and encourage and facilitate that happening. If that for some reason isn't through the Mutual Aid Association, then it should be with the other fire chiefs that you sit down and organize in a different way. I mean, I'm very supportive of Camden leading some kind of a meeting. I just don't want to be making a statement only as Camden.
Audra,
I was just going to say, like, this really isn't about one call or one town. It's really trying to align our mutual aid assumptions with, how fire and EMS services are actually delivered on the ground.
I mean, I'm looking at the chief's memo which has a section of recommended next steps. And the first one is, I like this, right, is a direct review of assumptions. And there's been a lot of and that to me is the big part of the problem, is there's a lot of assumption based on history that isn't necessarily codified anywhere. And so what I hear you asking is to say, can we go forward with reviewing that and figuring out what's working and what isn't? And that's what we're talking. We're not talking about a whole new plan, or
Right.
let's work with our partners to say there are some things that are working, and there are some things that we're relying on history and assumption. So that's all we're talking about. I mean, I think in some ways we're making the mountain out of the.
So where
You
do
know,
you
in
think,
terms of
where
what
do you
needs-
think this conversation is best placed? Who should be having it? And is it something that you would lead with other chiefs and bring back something for us to look at? Or where should this land?
We will likely have a conversation at the mutual aid association meeting later this month.
Mhm.
So we'll be able to tell. We'll have a gauge about what happens and what the level of willingness is to amongst the mutual aid association to strengthen these bylaws or strengthen these types of agreements.
And I had conversations with two of my colleagues today who really want to, start working on this together.
So I guess I would like to just say that I think that I speak for the board in saying that we want to see the strongest possible agreement, whether, and to Allison's point, to have it not be something that becomes, like
Managed by elected officials or
micromanaged. Yeah,
whoever
it's
else.
not our place to do that, but our commitment is to you and to the service that you provide.
And I think some of these examples that we have from the communities I listed are ways that can strengthen that mutual aid agreement, right? Because that's ultimately our goal. We're not, like I said, we're not trying to highlight a problem. We're saying,
So we would
let's-
just
let's-
welcome a draft of something that you feel gets you to a more secure relationship. Yeah. Any other comments from the board?
Are you just looking for our endorsement to have these conversations, or what specifically is helpful from us? Is this what you needed, or is this a disappointing response, or is this?
No, I think this is just fine. I mean, I think a structure fire at Hannaford is about as serious as it gets. And, usually we could count on everybody showing up to that, or if they weren't going to, we would know that they weren't going to, and we would be able to plan accordingly. So this is is a little bit jarring. So given all the changes to the departments in the past couple of years, it just seemed like a good time to look at whether or not the structure we've been working under for 50 years is appropriate, or we need to formalize things a little bit more. And we just thought, as the elected leaders in Camden, it was really important for you to all know about this and just sort of get your moral support in moving forward with trying to figure out a way to address this better, because I think that there is a very correct expectation amongst Camden taxpayers that now we're funding a full-time fire EMS department, that their level of service is going to improve.
Mhm.
It's not going to degrade.
Mhm.
And, we're looking at this thinking, can we, rely on the assumption that we're going to have the same level of support from other departments that we did in the past? And if we didn't, and our quality of service degrades, even though we're investing more money in fire and rescue services, that's not a good outcome for folks in Camden, and it's not a good outcome for folks in the surrounding areas, because that line that was drawn, that delineates us from Lincolnville or Rockport or Hope or any of our neighbors, it's pretty artificial in a lot of ways. We all rely on each other particularly when it comes to public safety, that when somebody calls, we're going to show up. And when you don't, you need to start looking at why and how you can strengthen that again, because it obviously is showing that there's some level of stress or fraying on that. So I think that that's why we wanted to bring it to your attention, and why we wanted to kind of explain to you what our options might be moving forward, and that we had support from some of our neighbors to do that.
Great.
Is
Thank you.
dispatch doing well these days? Is that part of, we haven't got an update on that in a while, but
Well, I think
that
when
part
the
of this
county administrator
conversation?
was here a couple of months ago,
Yeah.
they
they said they seem to think they were doing better.
believe the
From
direct-
everything we've heard.
I believe the
that's not
directors-
part of the problem here?
No, that's not part.
No, I mean, they're rebuilding that workforce. It's staffed much better, and they're new people, so they're training and learning.
Either said they were fully staffed or they were one vacancy.
Okay,
So can I just add one thing?
Yep.
I'll be quick,
Mhm.
please.
go ahead.
As you know, I've asked, a couple of questions about what the history has been. And you're right, it's the right thing to do to ensure that there is good communication between the towns that are involved with doing the mutual aid. And if it's your belief that what has been in place for 75 years is no longer good enough, that I think it's a good thing to work with your peers in the towns to go ahead and make something that's better for all 4 towns if it isn't now. So I would say overall, that's the right thing to do, and work with the other 4 towns to come up with something that the 4 towns think are better. If it is 4 towns, I think it's 4 towns initially for 1 alarm fire.
Okay. Thank you, Chief.
Okay,
And
thanks.
thank you to your crew. We appreciate it. All right, now the moment you've all been waiting for. Drift.
Is that the moment we've all been waiting for?
Well,
Susan?
we've
I
got a
don't know.
packed
That-
house here, and I'm thinking that they're all here to talk about snow.
Mutual aid, I always worry about the 4th of July when not everybody's in Thomaston for the parade and what.
I know. I have plenty of comments, but they're probably not very educated.
Anytime I see that parade, I'm like, okay, every fire engine in Knox County is in Thomaston right now. And people are doing fireworks and setting barbecues all over.
Good evening.
Hi, Susan.
Welcome.
Thank you. Jeff Nathan, General Manager, Camden Snowball. Before we get into drift, I'd love it if I could take 2 minutes and just give a general update on the Snowball, let you know how things are going so far.
Please.
So we opened this year on Saturday, December 13th, a day earlier than last year. We've been open for 13 days. We had 2 rain closures so far this year. Exciting to report the triple chair will open tomorrow, which is great. We opened it last year on December 26th, and a lot of lessons learned about opening it prematurely last year and snow quality. So we were more patient this year, but I'm excited to say we'll have it open tomorrow. Last year we were open 64 days. Our target this year is to be open for 67 days. The new ticketing and rental building is excellent. If you haven't had a chance to come over and see it, I would certainly encourage everybody to do it. It's a nice addition to the campus. We've sold 2,203 day tickets so far this year in the 13 days we've been open. Last year was a little over 1,800 tickets we sold. So a positive trend so far this year. 1,100 of those tickets were to people out of state. So, interesting when we think about the community benefits and the economic benefits of having our little ski area right here in Camden, to know that over 1,100 of those tickets that were sold were to people out of state, I think is pretty compelling. We sold 616 tubing tickets. It's been sold out almost every hour that it's been open, a huge success. What I love about the tubing hill is it provides really an affordable, healthy outdoor activity for people who may not ski. It's a way for local people to get outside and enjoy the snow and the activities at the Snow Bowl. So I'd certainly encourage everybody to come over and check that out. Of the 2,200 day tickets, 60 of them were to Camden residents. So we had 60 day tickets sold to Camden residents so far this year. And just a reminder, tomorrow's Wednesday, and on Wednesday, Camden residents ski for free at the Camden Snow Bowl. And we've had, of all of our season passes sales this year, we've had 336 season pass sales to Camden residents. What's significant about that is 72 of those are family passes. So 72 of the 336 involve an entire family's worth of people. So, my rough estimate is that's over 500 Camden residents that have season passes this year, which is a great start. Just financially, quickly, we're about $134,000 ahead of where we were this time last year in terms of overall revenue. We've exceeded our season ticket sales target for the year. So we're at 102% of what we had in the plan. So I'd say, really so far so good on how things are going out there. I know we're going to be talking about snowmaking. So just one other snowmaking change of pretty good significance and favorable for us. Our meter was being read on December 4th, or the 4th of every month. And what that meant was if we had favorable conditions and we wanted to make snow prior to December 4th, there was an additional charge that we would have to pay in order to do that. Well, we were successful in getting the meter reading date changed to the 15th of each month, which means there's no difference now if we start making snow after November 15th as there would be December 4th in terms of the charge that we would get for making snow. So while we started making snow on December 4th this year, it's a good news story for us making snow going forward. Should we have favorable attempts earlier in the year, we'll be able to start making snow earlier without a financial burden in doing so. So that's the update on the Snow Bowl. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to bring Drift back to this forum. As the general manager of the Snow Bowl, I really look at my job responsibilities now that this is my second season slightly differently than I did coming into season one. And I really have four primary responsibilities. First and foremost is the safety of everybody there, employees and guests alike. If they're at the Snow Bowl, the first thing I'm concerned about is everybody's safety. After that, it's providing a healthy, fun outdoor experience for people. Thirdly and fourthly, and we could argue depending on the day and the order of those, but it's being a good financial steward and being a good environmental steward. Those are the four things that I look at that I am charged with as the general manager of the Snow Bowl. Drift, I think, checks a lot of boxes when it comes to those responsibilities. So I do have, as I was preparing my notes today, I decided the best thing to do would be to put it on a PowerPoint presentation, which I will make sure for the public that this is someplace which is available for you, as well as for the members of the select board. It's not in the packet as of now, and I apologize for that, but I realized as I was looking at the memo I prepared, it just didn't contain enough content to do justice to this conversation. So let's start out with what Drift is, which is an organosilicone surfactant. If you're not familiar with what that does, is it decreases water tension, surface tension, which allows water to freeze faster and more and more thoroughly, which the punchline, it makes lighter snow. That's an important thing to remember as we talk about that, because a lighter snow has a safety benefit, it has a financial benefit, it has an environmental benefit, and it certainly increases the fun factor. So all things that check all of those boxes of things that I know that I am accountable for at the Snow Bowl. So what does it do? And what are the functions? It breaks up the surface tension of water droplets as they leave the snow guns. It freezes faster. So by lowering that surface tension, It increases the surface area of each droplet. It prevents clumping and allows for the snow to freeze faster, and it produces a drier and more consistent quality snow. If anybody has ever shoveled wet snow and then gone out there on a light powdery day and shoveled that powdery snow, and you're like, oh, this is wonderful, right? That's what we're talking about when the difference between making dry snow and light flaky snow and snow that comes out of a snow gun clumpy. So it's primarily used when snowmaking temperatures are near or slightly above freezing. So it means that we can make snow at higher temperatures and higher humidity, two challenges that we have here in coastal Maine. Right? When you start heading out into Western Maine, they have the benefit of typically colder temperatures and lower humidity levels. We don't have that luxury. As you're looking through this information, if you were to go back and look at the days we made snow this year versus the potential days we could have made snow this year, had I been able to use, or had we used drift, let me say it that way, this year, the triple chair would have been open Christmas break. I'm more than confident that that would have been the case. And opening the triple chair for Christmas break, again, checks a lot of boxes for us. There's a financial benefit because we charge, there's a discounted lift ticket for when the double chair is only open. There's certainly a fun factor, and it also spreads out the volume of people across the mountain. So a tremendous amount of benefit when that can happen. Having used drift based on, and anybody can go online and look at the temperatures and the humidity levels since we started making snow on December 4th, and we'll be able to see what days we would have been able to make snow that unfortunately we were not able to. So a couple other things to think about. It increases the water flow rate. So how effectively the water goes through the water pipes by between 5 and 30% without pushing slush out of the pipes. Where that's helpful is today, when we make snow, it takes two components. It takes the water that's being pumped. It also takes air, compressed air that's being also pumped into the system. By increasing the water flow rates, we can actually decrease the compressor usage. We have $190,000 in the budget for electricity to operate those compressors in order to make snow in any given season. Energy savings is good for the environment. It's also good financially for the Snow Bowl to be able to reduce the amount of compressor use. I talked about opening the triple tomorrow and the lessons I learned from last year. Last year, we opened the triple on December 26th, and the snow quality was not good. People were very kind, and they loved the fact that it was open, but the snow quality was not good. And that leads to a lot of things. One, there's safety concerns. Two, there's also the customer experience, the experience of somebody has when skiing on that. We were a lot more patient this year. We let the piles drain and drain and drain so that when we did finally push them out, it was dry snow. Using drift allows us to decrease that time that we have to be patient, waiting for all of the water to drain from the snow. It also spreads the snow out. If you were to go up on the hill now, you're going to see piles of snow, some of them in excess of 30 feet high. Right? One of the benefits that drift has is it allows the snow to cover more surface area so that it's not in these massive 30-foot piles that have to be pushed out. So I want to talk about the volume and then the potential environmental impact. I know last year when we talked about it, that was a big concern for the community and a big concern for the select board, and rightfully so. Also a big concern for me. So I think it's important that we talk about what we've learned since the last time we've met, and what the potential risks still are of it. So if we were to use drift 100% of the time in our snowmaking, we'd use 11.5 gallons. So it's about 550 hours of snowmaking in a given year. It's administered into the system at 3 parts per million. How it works is we have a metered system in the pump house. It's a 30-gallon tank. We take 29 gallons of water. We mix in 1 gallon of drift. It's then metered into the snowmaking system at 3 parts per million. Hosmer Pond contains 158,349,006 gallons of water. That's based on a mean depth of 9 feet, and the foot acres based on mainlakes.org, and all of that's included in the memo. For the purpose of doing all of the calculations about the potential harm, I cut that in half. I cut the gallons in Hosmer Pond in half, because we know, right, there's not going to be an exact, no one's going to go out and measure exactly 158 gallons. So I used 79 million gallons when determining what the potential concentration in Hosmer Pond would be. And the total potential concentration would be 0.00145 parts per million if it was at half of the water volume that is actually in Hosmer Pond. So let's talk about what the potential concerns are. I asked AI for help with this. And I took AI and I plugged in all of the variables that are known. And I asked AI to help me validate whether the assumptions that I used and the math that I did was accurate. And so what we found when I asked about the potential environmental concerns is that the runoff of melted snow containing the surfactant into natural water bodies, that is a potential concern, because the manufacturers state the product is designed to degrade rapidly and prevent significant concentrations from developing. Aquatic toxicity is a potential hazard at low concentrations if the material does not degrade as expected. So if it doesn't biodegrade as it's supposed to, then there is a potential concern. And the health risk, if somebody were to open the concentrated bottle of drift and inhale it or drink it, there's the potential harm to the person that's handling it. There's I read somebody had concern about it being aerosolized and what would happen if it was, is snowmaking aerosolizing drift? And in fact, it is not. Aerosolizing drift would essentially be taking the concentrated drift and spraying it out into the environment, which is not what we are doing. We are mixing it into a 30-gallon mix and metering it out at 3 parts per million, which is different than aerosolizing a concentrated concentration of it. So let's talk about the environmental impact. So essentially, you think about we make snow over 90 days. If we're to use that 11.5 gallons of drift over 90 days into a 150 million gallon pond, the risk is negligible to low. The daily concentration would increase by 0.00085 milligrams per liter. It's too low to cause acute harm to fish, plants, or insects. The primary concern is long-term accumulation of the persistent silaxone backbone in the pond sediment. So that would be the concern if it builds up over time. Because the pond has both an inlet and an outlet, it significantly decreases the overall risk of the silaxone accumulation in pond sediment because of dilution and hydraulic flushing. So in other words, there's constantly water coming into the pond. There's constantly water going out of the pond. Because of that, the risks are mitigated significantly because of that. So punchline is there's no short-term risk to aquatic life, plants or insects. There's the potential for a long-term risk of bioaccumulation, which, as you can see, significantly decreases because of dilution and hydraulic flushing. So the acute fish toxicity, the calculated level is approximately 27 to 56 times lower than lethal levels. at the rate we're going to use it. For invertebrates, it's 14 to 30 times, 33 times lower. And it is not considered a chronic, no observed effective concentration. So the surfactant is an organosilicone. And it's, I think for the purpose of this discussion, I think it's important to understand how prevalent this is in all that we do really is in a civilized society. It's in the automotive and transportation sector, particularly in electronic vehicles. It's in electronics and semiconductors. It's used in construction as sealants, weatherproofing, structural glazing, coatings, in the healthcare and medical industry, in biocompatible medical devices, implants, prosthetics, wound care, personal care and cosmetics. I think we all know from the last meeting, it's prevalently used in agriculture as a super spreader for things like herbicides and fungicides and fertilizer. It's used in aerospace and defense, in renewable energy for the assembly and protection of photovoltaic solar panels and wind turbine components, in textiles, and in industrial processes. It's a $92 billion industry, or projected to be in 2026. It's, these things are everywhere. When I was doing my research, Aquatrolls is the company that produces drift. They also produce an agricultural product called Capsil. Interestingly enough, they have an identical, the ingredient in drift, the primary ingredient in drift, and the primary ingredient in Capsil are the same ingredient. And I'll share why that's important in just a moment. So I included the technical label there. I'm not going to read that for your all benefit and mine, and the listing number with it. But when you look at the comparison between the two, the left column is drift, the right column is Capsil. So the silicone surfactant, which is the consistent chemical in both of these, that makes up 99% of drift and 20% of Capsil. The other components, there's a 1 to 16% of an inert ingredient, and there's an 80% of a non-ionic surfactant in Capsil. So why is that important? Because Capsil is listed by the Organic Material Review Institute as organic and okay to use in organic agriculture. So it's the same active ingredient in both. You'll see that drift is not organic. I think it's important to note that it's because it's designed for industrial snowmaking and does not carry organic agriculture certification. But it's the same active ingredient in both. I think that's certainly relevant to any discussion we're having about environmental effect, concerns. I was also looking at relative risks that we all accept in our day-to-day, and I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it is without argument that if you were to drive your car on Hosmer Pond Road to get to the Snow Bowl, you're likely having a more significant environmental impact than you would if we use drift 100% of the time in our snowmaking, because of what's called 6-PPD, which is a compound in tires which are used for to prevent them from cracking. It's roughly 1,000 to 10,000 times more toxic than drift, and that's just driving to the snowball. Again, I don't want to. The point is, one bad thing doesn't make another thing that is potentially bad any better. But the point is, automobile tires are a common thing of what we do every day. The organosilicone surfactant, it's a $92 billion industry. It is in so many different products that we interact with every day. And I think when we think about the benefits of using drift and I weigh them against the environmental concerns, to me, it's worth bringing it back up for this discussion. We're going to improve snow quality. Improved snow quality, good for everybody. The operating efficiency, less time, less money, less fuel. All things that are good for so many different reasons. The ability to make snow in marginal temperatures and increased humidity levels. Again, it would have been amazing to have the triple chair open Christmas vacation week for so many different reasons. Lighter snow is safer snow. It's if having been on the ski patrol for the last eight years, I can tell you firsthand the benefits of skiing in light, having seen for myself the benefits to safety from lighter snow. I mentioned the lower energy use because of the less electricity required for the compressors. It's also less diesel fuel consumed by the groomers having to push out, big piles of snow because it's easier to push around. So it's less in wear and tear on that expensive equipment. So I appreciate you allowing me to bring the topic back to the select board. If there's a specific ask in this, it is, I would love for you to consider allowing the Snow Bowl to use drift.
Thank you, Jeff. Very thorough presentation. This isn't a public hearing per se, but we have received input from several folks who would like to speak to their concerns, and they are here. We're not going to take a lot more time with this. And again, I think you've covered a lot of the most salient points about the benefits to the Snow Bowl. But I would just ask if there is anyone here who would like to just speak briefly to their concerns, I would make this time available for the next few minutes.
I feel like, I guess my understanding is normally when we have an agenda item, we take public comments. So
Yeah.
is there any reason we would be restricting it to just
No,
people with?
no.
I mean, I imagine we
no,
would
I
say,
agree.
you restrict it to
Sure.
everybody needs to stay under 3 minutes
Yeah.
or whatever, but
No, you're right.
I had
You're
told
right.
people that we always take public comments on
Yeah.
our agenda items.
No, for sure. And I guess that having heard the pro drift side, if there are, but you're absolutely right. We should,
Maybe there are pro arguments out there
there
that we
could be
don't.
on both, yeah. So if there is anyone who would like to speak to this item, come up and please state your name and town of residence and contribute to the discussion. Please, sir, come ahead.
My name is Galen Todd. I'm a 25-year resident of Camden. I have 3 sons that live in town with families, so I have 6 grandkids. All are skiers at the Snow Bowl. I was also spent 15 years on the ski patrol. I was patrol director for a couple of years. And I've also spent 15 years on Camden Fire Department. So,
Oh, wow.
so I have a pretty good connection with the town and whatnot. I think the one thing that Jeff here failed to mention, and I know he didn't do it intentionally, but what I think is the most important thing is that Camden is a year-round destination and a year-round place for people to live. And the Snow Bowl provides an anchor during the winter months for that vision of a year-round community, which supports the businesses, the inns and the restaurants, and our whole fabric that makes this town work. So by having the best possible conditions at the Snow Bowl enhances our ability to maintain this community vision of a year-round operating community. So I would highly recommend that the drift is one tool in the toolbox to make sure that we can offer exceptional skiing, safe skiing. Jeff certainly mentioned that, and I can attest to that coastal packed powder, which we term as ice, is not the best in place to have visitors come and enjoy our marvelous gem of the Camden Snow Bowl. So I would strongly recommend that the board, that there is a strong consideration to reinitialize and begin to reuse drift in the snowmaking process. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Anyone else, please?
Good evening. For the record, my name is Richard Podolsky. I'm a resident of Camden. I'm a certified senior ecologist through the Ecological Society of America. I hold a doctoral degree in ecology from the University of Michigan. I also studied limnology, the science of lakes, under Dr. David Fry, who is widely regarded as the father of North American limnology. I've lived in Camden and Rockport for nearly 30 years and previously served on Rockport's Conservation Commission. I want to be clear at the outset. I'm not suggesting drift is a hair on fire chemical, nor am I equating it with compounds like DDT, PFAS. I also understand and accept the proposed use volume is small and that concentration reaching Hosmer Pond would be highly diluted. My concern is not about the gross dosage. It is about the ecological sensitivity, the scale, the timing, and the scientific uncertainty around this chemical. Hosmer Pond is a small, shallow, closed freshwater system with an equally small watershed. The snowball occupies somewhere between 15 and 25% of that watershed, which means it's a major shareholder and has a big influence on the pond. In systems like this, dilution is limited and repeated inputs from the watershed, however small in any single year, can accumulate in sediments and in biological compartments over time. In limnology, low concentration does not automatically mean low ecological relevance. I'm particularly concerned about the organisms that are both ecologically critical and largely untested with respect to drift, especially species like Cladoceran or Daphnia, along with other microinvertebrates in the microbial community. These organisms, though essentially invisible, form the base of the aquatic food chain. They are keystone grazers and are often the first to respond to subtle chemical stress. Most safety assessments focus on short-term lethality in a limited number of organisms and rarely address sublethal chemical stress. Most safety assessments focus on this short-term lethality and do not take into account reproduction, behavior, timing, and population dynamics, especially of the microorganisms, which are the foundation to the pond's health. Timing also matters. Snowmaking additives enter during the spring melt, precisely when Hosmer Pond is emerging from winter dormancy. When plankton populations are rebuilding, nutrient is cycling and accelerating. Even small chemical pulses during this biologically sensitive window can have a disproportionately large effect. Finally, I want to emphasize the uncertainty itself as a key issue. The science surrounding organosilicon surfactants like drift is not mature. We lack independent, product-specific data on long-term ecological impact in small freshwater ponds, and we do not have a reliable environmental half-life for drift in systems like Hosmer Pond. What the broader scientific literature does show is that related compounds are not rapidly biodegradable and tend to persist and partition into sediments, particularly in cold, low-energy freshwater systems such as Hosmer Pond. Environmental science has taught us repeatedly that substances once assumed to be benign often reveal problems only after prolonged use. Plastics are a modern example, but there are many others. This is precisely why precautionary principle states when scientific uncertainty exists in a sensitive ecosystem, the absence of proven harm is not a justification for proceeding. Given the chemical-free alternatives for snowmaking and grooming exist, my professional recommendation remains straightforward. Where impacts are uncertain and benefits are operational rather than essential, the conservative and responsible choice is to avoid introducing drift into Hosmer watershed. Low dose does not always mean low risk, and dilution is not a solution to pollution. In short, even if the risk is low, the case for caution is strong, and it aligns with Camden's values for environmental stewardship and long-term care for Hosmer Pond. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Much appreciated. Would anyone else like to speak to this topic? Yes.
Thanks, Brian Robinson, Camden Town resident, 20-year member of the Camden, the Ragged Mountain Ski Patrol, former member of the Parks and Rec Committee when it existed, former member of the Energy Committee when it existed in the town, and former member of the Conservation Commission. Also spent 20 years in environmental education. And Richard, I appreciate your concern for the environment. I share that concern very acutely with you myself. And I would say that in terms of the drift, Jeff did a phenomenal job of identifying a lot of positive attributes. Safety is an enormous concern. We operate a recreational facility. We invite the public, not only the community, but the larger public from Knox County and beyond. I spoke with people from Florida, from out west, from across the country, just in the first few days we've been open this year. They come here because of what we have to offer. Economically, as has been mentioned, the Snow Bowl is an anchor for the community. The most recent information that I'm aware of, which came out prior to the 2015 redevelopment plan, was that the economic impact of the Snow Bowl was about $3.5 million a year to Knox County community. I suspect that in the last 10 years, that's probably doubled. So perhaps it's $7 million a year of economic impact. Jeff, I'd ask you a question. You identified that there were about, I think, 2,200 ticket sales that occurred so far this year. Is that correct? Those are day ticket sales?
Day ticket sales, yes.
Day ticket sales. What's the target price for a day ticket sale ticket at this point? Is it $50 or $50?
$52, yeah.
$52, but those were sold at a discount,
25%
a
off.
25% discount. So those 22,000 or 2,200 tickets that we sold this year would have been sold for 33% more. So they would have been sold for, let's see, 52 divided by 4. What's the math on that? About $13. So $13 times 2,200. Can anybody do that math? Don't tell me I'm the only guy. Duncan, you're an
Put a 0 on the end.
2860,
sorry?
2,860.
So 2,200 times 13?
$28,000.
Okay, $28,000. So the mountain would have taken in $28,000 more dollars just this last 2 weeks alone had the mountain been open, which would have happened had we been using drift. My point to you, select board members, and to the community at large is this is not only an environmental decision, there's an economic decision. And you own that decision that you make as to how much investment you're asking myself and all of the other. How many people here are Camden taxpayers? Raise your hands, please. Okay, so about 75% of the group here, you're asking them to contribute to the Snow Bowl.
We
So,
try not to, but.
well, that's a decision that you all need to own, in my opinion. And this is one aspect of it. And I think it's been underrepresented. And I would ask you to consider that seriously, as well as the risk that was discussed regarding, for example, just driving your car. We are faced with a tremendous amount of risks. If we are serious about wanting to protect Hosmer Pond, let's shut down the road that goes past it. Let's not let Ken and other people who swim there, myself included, wear our bathing suits because we carry into the pond surfactants that come from our detergents. So let's make it a buck naked swimming hole. This is what we're talking about here, folks. These are the kind of issues. So I would ask you to take into account all of the aspects, the environmental potential, the economic potential, the safety potential, and the fun factor as you make your decisions. Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
I'm Dennis McGurk. I have lived in Camden for 25 years. I ski at the Snow Bowl regularly. My background is in geophysics. I did a lot of research on drift and the other surfactants and other additives that you can use for enhancing snowmaking. In addition to the advantages, I looked at what were the measurable tested consequences for health. On human beings, none, because we can't test chemicals on human beings ethically. But we do it on animals, we do it on fish, we do it on algae, and we do it over periods of time. And we found that the concentrations that we are planning to use are hundreds to thousands of times lower than anything where we've gotten measurable adverse effects. So I can't address the long-term effects because they haven't been tested. But I would only say that if you're looking for a zero impact possibility, nothing will meet that standard. Thank you.
Would anyone else like to speak to this topic? Beatty?
Hi, this is Beatty Parker, Washington Street. I can't really address this except to say that if we use this kind of argument, apparently our use of materials like this is so immense that what you're talking about for this particular choice doesn't seem significant. But if we keep doing this, it's really an end game. I don't want to say, oh, don't use this because it harms aquatic creatures. We know it does. We know that all the other uses that were used to justify this use, because we're already being so offensive to the environment. The argument just shows us where we're going. You can choose to take these advantages that drift give us, and they're all real advantages in terms of money. And we said safety, but it's an argument that we got to stop making, just in general, for all the other uses that were so carefully laid out as a justification for using this material. And thank you for the scientific background that was presented earlier. It's what this stuff does to water to lower the surface tension affects organisms. Now, what we just heard is that all these other things that we're doing so cavalierly are doing the same. So it doesn't really matter much if we do drift or not. But it sure matters in the larger scale.
Thank you, Beatty. Anyone else? Eric?
I'm Eric Evans. I live on Annis Road in Camden, and I'm a member of the Hosmer Pond Association. If we were talking about adding salt to snowmaking, all of those advantages that you described would seem inconsequential, but we're not talking about table salt. We're talking about something that is not, there is not good evidence that it's biodegraded. There are no long-term effects. There have been no studies of long-term effects. The studies upon which generalizations are made about the toxicity are on short-term effects and in most cases laboratory feeding experiments and exposure in laboratories for very short terms. So the concern that has not been studied is that there could be bioaccumulation, and the result of that would be eventually much higher concentrations in some organisms going up the food chain than would be suggested by the dilution, the extreme dilution that occurs in the snowmaking and runoff. So my concern, what I picture is that the 12 gallons of drift that's applied to the snow area in the snow making is going to be washed out into, not diluted into all 20 million acre feet or 20 million gallons. It's not going to be diluted into the whole pond. It's going to be dumped into a cove that does not have, it has a dilution factor that is unknown compared with the dilution factor for the whole pond. So it's something that has, it would be hard mathematically to describe that without making some really big assumptions. Anyway, I think the possibility for bioaccumulation and damage to the habitat in that cove, which is maybe only 5 or 10% of the pond area, is different than, and it's not really described by the dilution factor of the 12 gallons into the whole pond. So this is just a single detail of the one aspect of the uncertainty that has not been addressed in any scientific studies of the effect of long-term effect of drift on the aquatic habitat. Another aspect that I'm concerned about is that the descriptions of all the benefits to the snow bowl, which I really appreciate, and I think those are, all the aspects of snow quality, I think, are really important. And it's, how do we weigh that against the unknown of possible long-term effect of this chemical in the aquatic ecosystem? That's the substance of the problem, is that's an unknown. And regarding that, when you describe the benefits, there's maybe 10 or 15 benefits that you described, and only 1 or 2 of them did you give a quantitative description of the magnitude of the advantage. So when you say I always like to know when in a considerations like this, what is the magnitude of the advantage? And the other thing is that that long list of advantages it reminded me of all the advantages of fluorocarbon compounds that are in the category that we call forever chemicals now, that seemed for decades to have many wonderful applications, but little was known about the long-term effect of them on human health or on the environment. And now, only with the studying of long-term effects and bioaccumulation over many decades, can we look at all the wonderful advantages of these compounds in a much different light. And I think in terms of the question for the town of Camden, weighing the advantages of using drift versus the unknowns of the possible long-term effect on the habitat of the aquatic habitat in Hosner Pond is that I think accepting the use of drift would set a dangerous precedent in terms of favoring the monetary benefits of the operation of the snowball and the benefits to the town versus the possibility of long-term effects. So I would just close by saying that lack of evidence of harm from using a chemical, allowing a chemical to enter the environment. Lack of evidence is not, does not equate to evidence that there is an effect. And we should adhere to the precautionary principle of avoiding a practice that we do not have long-term. We have no evidence about long-term effect. So,
Thank you, Eric.
yeah.
It's not usually my forte, but I'm a resident of Lincolnville, so with permission to speak. Okay, thank you. I'm also the ski patrol director, and when he mentioned, I wasn't going to get up and say anything, but he mentioned magnitude of benefit, I think was the word, or the actual what we're actually seeing. I took over from my other esteemed patrol directors a couple of years ago and was noticing. And now it's my job to keep track of injuries, keep track of what happens, where it happens, how it happens. And there was a noticeable difference in the last maybe 3 or 4 years of the magnitude of injury we see. And I don't know, I can't say, oh, if we use drift, no one's going to get hurt. I cannot stand up here and say that. But what I do know is we've had some very substantial injuries with substantial pieces of ice and snow, and the freeze thaw cycle we get here on the coast does not, we have state-of-the-art groomers, we have, amazing operators that groom the snow. But when we have this freeze-thaw cycle and you push it over to the side of the hill, we get these, engine block-sized ice chunks. And what the addition of drift would be is to make the snow softer, more malleable, be able to plow it out and not have these big obstacles in the way. Skiing is inherently dangerous sport, but anything that we can do to try to limit that. And I really do appreciate all of the environmental impact that we've talked about. I really do. And if this guy's asking, and he does too. I mean, he spent hours trying to find us a PFAS-free uniform. Hours. Call me up. What can we do? If Jeff's asking for it, he would never do anything to place anybody in any harm. So I just wanted to give some quantifiable, things that we see on the mountain. So thank you for your time.
Appreciate it. So I think we'll turn it to the board at this point for discussion.
I have 7 questions, if you don't mind.
7 questions, okay.
Thank you. Overall, this is really related to risk offset is really what we're talking about for a lot of this, the gain versus the risk. A few questions. These are really brief and probably a very brief answer. You mentioned in your presentation that the system is already in place. When was this used before? Which seasons?
Used in the winter, when Jeff Cooler was the former general manager. I don't know the exact dates.
About when was
Approximate
that?
years.
Ryan?
2016. Yeah, I can give some context to that. Jeff was using it before I arrived in 2006, and I can't remember when his untimely death was. And then it was used during the land and take era as well, and it was stopped around the redevelopment, just after the redevelopment. No one can seem to figure out why.
Nobody's going to be able to hear this on the recording because of the
Okay,
microphone.
I just want to
but
let's
like
get a
basic
rough
years.
idea. We don't
Yeah.
need let's.
I have that same question.
2006 to 2013, does
Okay.
that sound about right?
Yeah, I think it was even after, I think it was up through about 2015 at least. I'm not sure if it was used subsequent to that.
Okay, thank you.
So. 2015,
About-
the last 20.
About, you might want to say up here, about how many gallons are we talking about that were being used then?
11 and a half. per
11 and a
season.
half. Okay, great. How much less were the electric bills based on not having to pump out it's a better, easier way? You said there could be a reduction in electric bills as a result. How much less during that time when this was being used were the electric bills, or how much have they increased since then as a result of not using this?
I don't know if that's easily
I-
known, Chris. It's, I know, give you just one reason. Our electric's going up 3.76% this year.
But the kilowatt hours should be
But
consistent.
the equipment used at that time was completely like the chairlift was different, the snow guns were different, the compressors were different. It's
So there's no measurable,
not, yeah,
you can't make a measurable
it's
difference. Okay,
apples to
good.
cheese.
I'm up to number 4 now. How many days of snowmaking between rainstorms is required before the top of the hill is ready to be used? About,
Do you mean this year?
in general,
particular?
how many days is it between rainstorms? What takes the snow away, and now you got to replace it at the top of the hill to make the top of the hill viable?
Anywhere between 0 and 14, depending on the significance of the rain. So either there's no impact,
Mhm.
tomorrow it's going to rain, there won't be any impact on our snow and our ability to stay open to the top of the mountain. If we were to have a rain event that washed away all of our snow, we would have to start from 0. So 2 weeks of snowmaking.
And if it's 2 weeks of snowmaking without drift, any idea on how many days of snowmaking is required with drift?
I would
for
love
that?
to be able to tell you that.
Okay, but you can't yet, right? Okay.
I-
We're doing well. We're doing well. We're down to, these next 2 questions are probably the same answer. You mentioned in your slide, if the drift product biodegrades effectively, A, what is that? And B, what is the half-life? That was also mentioned. How do we know if it is biodegrading effectively or not?
According to the manufacturer, the half-life is 2 weeks. How do we know? We don't test for it, and it would be at such small, mathematically small levels in Hosmer Pond, it would be undetectable.
Okay. If you were to introduce drift into this is the last question that I have. If you were to introduce drift into the system, is it always there, or is it something that can be shut off? For example, since we're talking about this overall as kind of a risk offset, we don't want to flood our mountain with drift and flood the lake with drift. Are there, 90 days, how many days of snowmaking are you really doing? Are there more effective days that drift could be used and you don't use 11 gallons? You maybe you use drift so you can be open on Christmas Day and New Year's Day. I don't know, whenever the days are that make it more effective to make snow. Is it possible to only do a partial?
Yes.
Thank you. When you envision that then, using 11 gallons, how many snowmaking days are you thinking?
Every snowmaking day we have.
But are you saying that that is an unrealistic expectation that you don't plan to use it every single day?
So our intent with making snow is to open the mountain and open as much of the mountain as we have snowmaking ability to do. With the exception of 2 trails, Spinnaker and Lookout, we have a snowmaking system which enables us to make snow on the remainder of the mountain. The intent is to get as much of the mountain open as quickly as we can. Drift enables us to get more of the mountain open faster, which, although I cannot quantify it for you today, my argument would be, if drift works as intended, I'm making snow for less time than I would without drift.
I did
Chris,
see, I think this might address some of Chris's questions. In terms of snow making and maintenance, I did see some mountains reporting that their grooming was reduced 30 to 40%. Because they don't have to go out every single night to break it up. At this time of year, if you ski the snowball or kind of anywhere in New England, at the end of the day, there's chunks. It clumps together. We call them death cookies. And that has to be broken up, and the machines have to work that much harder. So it can reduce grooming alone 40%.
So was grooming reduced 40% less when we were running it before?
Again, you're comparing almost, I mean, I don't know, they know more but almost every component of the mountain machinery is different.
It's changed.
Than it was in that era. We had much less efficient snowmaking. We had older groomer, so you just can't compare that.
So since what we're missing then is a lack of comparisons, and trying to reduce the risk offset of not having too much sediment with drift in Hosmer Pond and whatnot, is it possible to do a test for a month to see what the difference is?
Yes, it's possible.
And you could then shut off drift after a month. So we're talking 30 days instead of 90 days. So maybe it's 3 gallons instead of 11 gallons or something.
Yeah, if you were to say, hey, go out and use drift, right? We can't make snow for probably the next 10 days anyway because of the weather. Right. Although with drift, I could probably reduce that significantly because we'll have marginal temperatures. Ideally, I want to use drift at the beginning of the season when we have marginal temperatures, when we have high humidity. Using it in February when it's cold out is likely not necessary or as necessary. The benefits of it are diminished. using it at the beginning of the season is ideal. And Chris, the thing I have to, like any other experiment that has multiple variables, right? It will be difficult to determine specifically what benefit is directly linked to drift. The ambient air temperature, the relative humidity, how effectively the snowmakers moved the snow guns during the period of time, right? How frequently we were making snow between 5 p.m. and 9 p.m. when our electricity bills go up, right? These are all factors that will affect the outcome, the data, and may or may not be directly related to the use of drift.
You only make snow during, isn't January, don't you stop making snow at the end of January? Isn't there
We
a hard
typically,
end to the snowmaking because of the electricity, or what is the determining factor?
expense is typically the determining factor. Again, because we moved.
Were you renting equipment in the past? Didn't you rent snowmaking equipment and then it was turned in? And is that no longer the case?
Yes, Susan, that is no longer the
Okay,
case.
so
So
we
we own the
own-
compressors now, the 3 compressors we use. Changing the meter reading date to the 15th,
Mhm.
again, allows us a little bit more flexibility about when we begin and end
Mhm.
snowmaking.
So I'm a huge fan of the snowball. I'm not a skier, but I'm a huge fan of the snowball and all that it brings to this community. And I will go to the mat for the snowball, as I have with budget, with consideration across the board. It's a remarkable part of our community. In the past few years, we've undergone a huge exercise in looking at how that facility can be viable year-round. We've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on research and studies and analysis and the building rehab and the revamping and so on and so forth. I, like Beatty, I feel like this argument around minimal risk because it hasn't been proven. I don't know how much more of that we can absorb. And I say that with all due support for what happens at the snowball. And so it's a very difficult, it's a hard position to take in light of what the benefit is to this community. I'm not one that puts my finger in the air and says, how's the political wind blowing? But reading Richard's letter, and I'm very, I find it quite compelling to think about, where we are. This is part of a water ecosystem that's flowing down through Goose River into Rockport Harbor, et cetera, the knock-on effects. So I haven't 100% decided how I'm going to vote on this, but just so you know, it's not anti-snowball. It's pro-environment in a way that is deeply concerning to me.
And I appreciate that, Susan.
Yeah.
I really do. It's, I understand this isn't an easy decision for all of you to make. I know we say we have no hard evidence, but Ken, how's the swimming in Hosmer Pond? We've had drift in it for 7 years ago. Is it okay? I mean,
I
we
don't
do
think
have
that's the
some,
litmus test. I mean, people swim in dreadful places. I don't.
right, but I mean, I guess we don't have any, I'm not aware of any concerns
People
about
swim in
the health
Hudson River.
of Hosmer
I have to say.
Ponds when we've
Allison,
used drift before, that's
Would
all.
you like to add?
Yeah, so I agree that the risk to Hosmer Pond is very, very low, in especially considering if you were going to look at that perfectly mixed scenario. The evidence does seem to show that it biodegrades. It's not something that bioaccumulates in the way that PFAS does. So I think a lot of those concerns are overstated. And I was really hoping to look at this all and be like, oh, it's like a table salt scenario, and the risks are all just theoretical. But and I think a lot of it for the pond is, and for Goose River downstream, it will be gone by then, I think, for the most part, and certainly after a few years. But the concern that I have is the brooks, the streams going directly into Hosmer Pond, the parts of the pond that are shallow right there. What we know, even if you were to disregard any of the other very similar chemicals, and you're just to look at the safety data sheet that Drift provides, which is kind of outdated anyway, it hasn't been updated since 2017, it has the LC50, or is it LC or LD? LC50 for zebrafish. Zebrafish are fish that are used as like a litmus test because they're more sensitive. So it has that at 6.8 milligrams per liter. So that's the dose at which 50%, if you take that and you put it in, you give that to the zebrafish, 50% of them die. And that's really close to the concentration that we're proposing to shoot it out of the gun.
6.8?
Yeah.
No, it's not even, it's not close to what we are proposing.
It is. You're at 3 parts per million.
Right, which is 3 micrograms per liter,
The
3 parts per million. Here's the
LC50 is 2.7.
should have been included in the
I
attachment.
mean,
Yeah,
I've
It's from October 25, so it's not the 27. There's an updated one.
Yeah, that's in the packet.
what's the milligrams per liter that you're proposing to put it out at? Once you combine it with Hosmer Pond and all of that,
Yeah. It's 3 parts per million, or 3 micrograms per liter is what it enters the system.
enters the system.
Enters the snowmaking pipes to go up the hill to be sprayed out of the snow guns. So bear in mind, we start making snow, there's no snow on the ground. So some of the snow doesn't turn into runoff. That snow and any potential drift in it is absorbed by the microbes in the soil and broken down. So it's not 100% that goes back into Hosmer Pond.
It's not Hosmer Pond so much that I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
It's the safety data sheet that explain it says of all the things to be concerned about, and I agree, the evidence about bees and all of that is really low that there would be concern, but it says it is toxic to aquatic organisms. This is from their own
Correct.
stuff. And so if we were to be doing, and my answer to this is going to be the same as it was the last time, that I would be willing to entertain this if we were doing any kind of water quality monitoring, any kind of water management plan. If we are as serious about caring about the environmental impacts of the Snow Bowl as we say we are, we would be doing what all the other places do that say they care about these things, and they have watershed management plans, and they study the water quality, and not just the bacteria during the summer at the beaches, but detailed water quality analysis. So if this plan could include actual 1 part per million, and I just looked this up, is 1 part per million is equivalent to 1 milligram per liter. So yeah. That's just a
Microgram.
Yeah, it's like 0.003.
1 part per million equals 1 milligram per liter.
Microgram is 1/1000.
Well,
I think that just.
this is from their own safety data sheet. It also says on the safety data sheet, it also says it's not readily biodegradable. And I understand that it's designed to degrade within a few years, but those to me are the types of contradictions that are just not easy to reconcile. When the safety data sheet says not readily biodegradable, when I look that up, that means that 60% of it doesn't degrade after 28 days in laboratory conditions. So my concern, and I'm not saying that it's always going to be a no for me. I too would start with the whole disclaimer about how supportive I am of the snowball. My family is annoyingly enthusiastic sometimes about it all. I'm very supportive. I will always vote to support it. But this didn't acknowledge any of the risk to the streams and the sensitive organisms that the company itself identifies as potentially at risk. So also, what was really helpful to me was tonight seeing the more about the benefits. That is what I think is taken like for granted a little bit among the skiing population. I know I was asking Chris a little bit, and he was like, I think the benefits to the skiing are self-explanatory. And I was like, no, that's not totally obvious. It also felt a little bit to me, looking at the research, like that the benefits are anecdotal. And it would be helpful to see something more concrete, but it just felt to me like there's not that much research that's gone into this. It's certainly not a PFAS situation, but it does say it's very toxic to aquatic organisms. And if I have a misunderstanding of what the dosage is, then can look into that. But I'd like to look at the streams, and I'd like to see long-term water quality monitoring. If we're using these things in such great volume in other places, then maybe we need to be doing some baseline monitoring. Because if we already have the stream and the pond filled up with surfactants, then we don't have as much of a margin to work with.
Allison, have you ever gone to a rubber duck race?
Yeah, I don't care for them, but yeah.
So spring runoff, you put a rubber duck in the brook, it's gone, right? It's the same thing. You won't get bioaccumulation in brooks during spring runoff. The water is constantly moving.
Well, you'd be surprised when we do the duck cleanup down in the harbor. But I didn't say that I have a bioaccumulation concern. I have an acute toxicity concern at the time of meltwater with it's a
Okay.
basic
That's fine.
principle.
Yeah,
And
I understand.
So I'd like to see if if Ken and Chriso would like to add to this, and then perhaps we can move on to a.
Yes, thanks. So I'm not sure that the question is not going to turn on a technical issue. It's going to be the value. I mean, how do we set a value on the snowball versus the cleanliness of Hosmer Pond? I'm really struggling, but I am struggling. But my resolution is to be the precautionary principle really sticks with me. That first of all, let's not create any possible danger to Hosmer Pond, and everything you pump up the hill on the snowball is going to wind up in the pond. We haven't addressed whether there is a chemical-free alternative, but you are currently doing the chemical-free alternative. You're making snow when it's cold, and so there's just a marginal time that the additive would actually be helpful. You're doing everything the same and hoping for a marginal assistance with drift. And the precautionary principle leads me to say, I've got to value the pristine cleanliness of Hosmer Pond very highly. And I don't know how to create a rubric that tells us the value of the pond versus the potential danger. It's all uncertain. There's an uncertainty of how dangerous drift is. There's an uncertainty about how effective drift will be to save you, a great deal of money. There's an uncertainty about how dangerous drift would be in the pond. So given all that uncertainty, I'm going to stick with the principle that to do no harm, the precautionary. I will be cautious and conservative. That's where I'm that's where I'm headed. You know, I support the snowball. I love it. It's such an advantage to town, and I love having it at the end of the pond. It's a wonderful feature.
Thanks, Ken.
Chriso.
I mean, there are so many thoughts on all sides of this. I said, yes, I did say to Allison that the advantages are self-evident because, Abby didn't go into this as much as I'd hoped she might, or Jeff, but like the safety, it's not snow at the edge of the trails when you use just the normal man-made snow. And so you're hitting, even not at speed, you can have an injury because there's just this rock wall at the edge of the trail. So, I mean, that safety component is just huge on why this is worth bringing it in.
Can I ask you a quick question about
Yeah.
that? What's the difference between natural, because we deal with all different types of
So,
natural snow.
Imagine
How do you deal with that?
The best way I can compare it is in your driveway, at the edge of your driveway, there's snow that hasn't been plowed and it's soft, and sometimes it gets harder. The end of your driveway, there's a bank where the snow plow has pushed and it's frozen and it's rock hard.
Uh-huh.
So imagine falling into that bank of rock hard plowed snow versus falling into the snow on your.
So what if we have, though, a lot of natural snow? We have the same problems as
No,
the
if you
driftless
have a
snow.
if you have a beautiful, wonderful snowy winter, you are grooming. It's more like it's like with drift.
Okay.
And so there's that, and that's, to try and get any comparisons, there's another factor of what's a winter like when we have, the first year that the snowball was open with the new chairlift, which was 2015, we had like a foot of snow every week. Like every week there was fresh powder and on all, so you can say that the groomers are being run less. We're using less fuel. We're putting less diesel smoke. And Brian hit a really good point that is like, we say we value the snowball. And at a certain point, we have to own the costs of operating a ski area in our town. We have to acknowledge that it uses water. It uses electricity. And this is a very, very small potential risk. I mean, if we talk about the tires on the road, how much trash ends up in Hosmer Pond after the toboggan championship? You go out on Hosmer Pond the days after, it's still full of litter. We have people parking on the pond during the toboggan championship weekend. There are vehicles out there. What if one of those goes through? There's fuel and so to what Brian said of are we going to close Hosmer Pond Road and keep no swimming, no boating, no anything? Or if we truly actually support this facility and think it's a good thing, doing something that has no proven impact. It's been in use around the country and overseas for decades. This drift has been in use. So,
Do you know if any of those, I would love to see a study where there were all these streams at a ski mountain and they were doing monitoring alongside. I really just couldn't find anything like that. Would you support water quality monitor? Is there a way to test for it? If we really were to test for it and it was a non-detect in all the streams, well, that would certainly, that's not
I mean,
the
yeah,
case.
So you're not going to find a study that can test for it because it's undetectable in the levels you're talking about using it.
That's not true.
no, you really
I have one last
well, then-
question that'll help
we don't
summarize
have-
this.
Then if we tested and it really continued to be undetectable in the streams, that would prove the entire point that if we did this and then we tested, well,
Okay,
I'm
excuse
just saying, I'm trying to get to the point where I could be supportive. I don't want to be irrationally dismissive. And the skiing people that are so enthusiastic about this are going to have to be a little bit patient with those of us who don't understand every, just how
And-
great
and that's-
the difference is. And
That's why the conversation was postponed last year. And we thought it would be a good time to bring it back and provide as much. This is the information that exists. And
one
there's a
part
lot
per
of-
million, by the way, I'm right about that. 1 part per million is 1 milligram per liter. So that's, thank you. I mean, we can argue
But the
about.
doses that they're talking about being lethal to zebrafish are drastically different than the doses we're talking about.
No,
by
they're the
time
same.
So I have a question. Under favorable, would drift be used 100% of the time that you're making snow? Or is it only, excuse me,
And it's just,
Maybe there's still time. If the best time to do it is at the beginning of the year, then really we still have time to talk about this more before the most beneficial time.
so if
Next
we're
year.
having cold, dry weather and you're making snow, optimal conditions for snowmaking, would you use drift all the time that you're making snow, or only under conditions where the temperature is a little higher or the humidity is higher?
Depends on I would use drift at startup regardless of the conditions, because it's going to make drier snow. It's going to make more snow in less time. And so that gets me more of the mountain open faster.
Right, but if we have a spell in January where we have nice, cold, dry weather and you want to max out, accumulate as much snow as possible to extend the season, are you still going to need to use drift in order to build up that supply of snow? Because you do that, right? You pile up snow that you can have in reserve to move around. Would you still use it?
Likely,
Under
yes.
good snow, like 20-degree, low humidity?
Susan, yeah, likely yes, because by that point in January, I'm making snow where we're skiing.
Mhm.
And if I make wet snow where we're skiing, I either have to close that trail or I'm putting people in harm's way. And I know that sounds dramatic, but skiing in wet snow, if you ski in dry snow and all of a sudden you hit a patch of wet snow, it's your skis stop and you eject. And
Well, no, but that means then you're under conditions where you need drift to make dry snow. But aren't there conditions where you make dry snow?
even dry snow is wetter than drift snow,
Okay.
according to
Okay, that's what I
according
was
to the
getting at.
manufacturers.
Getting at.
I have one last technical question that you had in your slide. And this was the slide you had that was comparing capsule to drift, and where you mentioned that capsule is considered organic. What I kind of missed was the concentration the same at the capsule and organic level as it was for drift? And if it was different, and I think it was different, was capsule a higher concentration and it was still okay? Or is drift a higher concentration than the organic product named?
So the ingredient that's in both, drift is 99% that ingredient, capsule is 20% that agreement.
So it's less.
Mhm.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's a pesticide, right? Isn't capsule?
No, it aids in the distribution of pesticides onto leaf surfaces. It makes it flow better
Okay,
over
well,
the
just because it's
surface.
organic doesn't mean.
So I think that we can turn this to the board for a vote at this point.
I don't believe so, ma'am.
Just
It's a discussion item, ma'am. It's not an action item.
You can do a straw poll just to see where you're all at.
at the end of
Okay.
Jeff's memo was a
First of all,
request.
Don't call me ma'am. Thank you. Let's just stipulate that going forward. And I think given the nature of where we are, it would be worth it to get the sense of the board about whether, because obviously Jeff wants our direction going forward. So I would poll the board as to their position at this point. Ken, would you like to go on the record?
Sure. No, I think I was clear that I have reservations that remain, and I would be err on the side of caution, and caution means not using drift.
Okay, Chris?
I would prefer to see a limited test to see what the changes are to the snow conditions.
And Chriso?
I'm in favor of it, or closing down all access to the pond.
Allison, how are you feeling?
I'm not ready to support it right now, but supportive of more information. Revisiting it at another time, perhaps.
Yeah, this is tough, but I'm afraid that I feel similarly that I'm going to err on the side of caution at this point. And, you know, that water ecosystem is going to way outlive the snowball or any of us. And I think that being cavalier about how we're treating our ecosystems, those days.
I just
have
want to
be-
object to that phrasing.
That's.
There is nothing cavalier about any of this.
No.
Or
I
discussion.
understand. I don't
I mean,
mean to.
this crew, I don't know how many hours you spent cleaning up the hydraulic leak and scooping up every flake of snow to make sure that not one drop of hydraulic fluid that came out of one
I
machine.
appreciate
like,
that. I was
this
not
is-
suggesting that that is an attitude,
Okay.
Chris. Oh, no, really.
And
I
we're
I
really
have the
supportive of
greatest
this.
respect for how things are run. I'm gonna hold with my position that I too, like Allison, I have more concerns than.
It would be really helpful to me to see endorsements or recommendations from conservation organizations, from IFW, from Trout Unlimited, from some of the, you know, if we have environmental concerns, it would be helpful to not feel like we have to make those decisions based on what research we're able to do and sifting through letters from people we respect on all sides. The most compelling thing for me is always going to be an opinion from, you know, a respected organization or agency tasked with, you know, overseeing that concern. So
Okay,
Great, thank you.
thank you. All right, we will move on to the short-term rental program update. Jeremy.
maybe we all should do a little candle burning or
Yeah,
something in
a little
between. Or
smudging here. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you for having me today. I'm Jeremy Martin, Planning Development Director for the town. I drafted a memo for you. Hopefully you all read it. I can just go into, just summarize it if you'd like. I'm going to read from it. It's just a little, not from the memo, but it's just some from notes. As you recall, back in June of 2024, voters overwhelmingly approved zoning and licensing requirements for short-term rentals. This followed nearly 2 years of work by the planning board on the subject. For background and for informational purposes, there's, I think, 40 to 45 municipalities in the state that are regulating short-term rentals right now. They do it in a variety of ways and for a variety of reasons. And we're talking Portland, South Portland, Ogunquit, Falmouth, Cape Elizabeth, Bar Harbor, Rockland, Bangor, Castine, all over the map in the state. I would also add that when the state passed LD 2003, which was this housing bill that was passed a number of years ago, which mandated certain things to try to facilitate housing opportunities statewide. One of the components of that bill was specifically allowed municipalities to regulate short-term rentals. That was in LD 2003. I think that's important to note. Over those 2 years, the planning board held numerous workshops on the issue. They conducted significant research on how other towns regulated STRs, and we primarily focused on Cape Elizabeth, Kennebunkport, and Bar Harbor on how they did it. And the planning board determined, if you recall, we did have a short-term rental registration requirement prior to these changes that voters approved. This would enable the town to implement a more comprehensive STR program than one was in place at the time. I think it's telling, looking at the numbers of STRs that were registered prior under a code requirement. They were required to. In 2022, we had 13, 2023, 22, 2024, 46. And I just point that out. It was clear that enforcement wasn't working. People were not complying with that requirement. They were violating the 7-day minimum requirements that were in place at the time. Planning board recommended that we move forward on changes to Chapter 290, which is the zoning code, Chapter 215, which is the short-term rental code. 215 is the licensing piece, 290 is the zoning piece. They work together. Chapter 290 allows short-term rentals in zones, and the 215 is the licensing aspect of the program. It does require that all short-term rental operations meet important standards that were developed to protect the community's natural resources, public safety, the safety of transient guests, and the character of our neighborhoods. And it also enabled the town to more fully understand the volume and near and long-term impacts of this previously largely unregulated land use. In addition, these regulations have allowed the town to ensure compliance with the state's relatively new subsurface wastewater rules, which require increased design capacities for properties that are using short-term rentals or that are being used as short-term rentals. I think that's particularly important. We're talking about Hosmer Pond a lot just a minute ago. I think it's particularly important for Hosmer Pond, McGuntacook Lake, and the river to make sure that we are monitoring and tracking and taking care of our water resources. And this is another aspect, another way to do it. The STR program requires operators to annually license their STRs and adhere to the standards that, again, address life safety of their transient guests, adequate septic system and drain field capacities, and good neighbor policies. That require operators to provide transient occupants for an informational packet, address such things as noise, public safety, septic usage, solid waste disposal, etc. As you may recall, if you've been following this, there are 3 types of short-term rentals that we have. There are commercial STRs, residential STRs, and seasonal STRs. And those are defined both in the Chapter 215 and in Chapter 290, and they're allowed in certain zones in Chapter 290. Some zones don't allow commercial, others do.
Real quick, Jeremy, on that topic, with those definitions, in your table, you have unhosted.
Yeah.
Is that a
Unhosted,
definition that fell away or something?
That was the prior definition in Chapter 215 before it got amended. And that's those numbers that I read earlier, the 12 and 22 and 48. Those were unhosted. That's what we required, only registration for unhosted at the time.
Okay.
That was what was in place. Initial research when the planning board was working on this estimated that there are between 200 and 400 STRs operating in Camden. Following the first year, now remember this is a year-long licensing. Your license lasts a year, starts January 1 and ends December 31st. After a year of doing this, we've identified 165 unique short-term rentals. And we've licensed this past year 151 of those. 10 or so failed to obtain a license for some reason. And those reasons could be generally were life safety issues that we had. We had some places where bedrooms had no egress windows. And those are significant issues, and we were not going to issue those until those are addressed. So the 151 STRs that we did license, 58 were residential STRs, and the residential STR, if you remember, that's where primary resident, the owner claims primary residency on that property. It doesn't have to be in the building. They can have an ADU next to it, or an accessory apartment, or a second unit next to it. There were 13 seasonal, and those are seasonal camps generally on the lakes that have no whole house heating, no installation. They're seasonal in nature. And then there were 80 commercial STRs, and these are where someone does not claim primary residency on the property, and they're year-round rentals. As this was the first year of implementation, we worked hard and cooperatively with owners.
And
to
they're
get
year-round
compliance.
rentals?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
You just say, and
I'm-
they're year-round rental, they don't claim primary residency on the parcel and they're year-round rentals? Is that what you said?
That's commercial.
By
Commercial.
year-round rentals?
Well,
Like-
meaning they have the ability to rent.
Oh, okay,
It's-
not like long-term,
Right.
but
No,
like.
it's available to rent.
Got it,
Able
got it,
to
got it,
rent
got it.
year-round, yes. As this was the first year, again, of implementing this, we worked very hard to work cooperatively and gain compliance. I think we did pretty good. Again, 165 identified. We have 151 that were licensed. We're working with a handful of others. So there were like 4, I believe, that kind of ignored us entirely. We're now moving into another year of licensing. So our plan is to ramp that up to make sure we're getting all of the ones that are identified registered. We have a system. We're working with Deckard Technologies. They have a system that allows us to go online, look through data. We can identify when properties are rented, when they're not rented. It's provides us a lot of information, and they can pinpoint which properties are where. Hard for us to do without that. It's impossible for us to do without a pro software system like that. In summary, I believe that the first year was very much a success, and it was in line with the intent of the voter-approved codes, and that was the intent, and that's how we've implemented it. This year, now we're starting the new year. We've had already at least 50 new renewals already applied for and issued. So we're well on our way to getting back to licensing everyone again. Inspections are done every 3 years. Inspections do not need to happen every year. That was a provision in the code. That said, we have issued, I think we issued like 10 conditional licenses, and those were done, either the inspection wasn't finalized yet, or there were minor things that needed to be addressed, and we are working with them to get that addressed, and we'll have the full license issued this year. I would say it did take a few months. I got a letter from someone today who submitted their renewal, and they were upset that last year they weren't able to license their rental through our system until March is when it came online. We were allowing people to rent their short-term rental with the understanding that we would be up and running. We were taking information from people, collecting information on STRs, and knowing that we were going to be up and running with our online portal system by March, and that's when we were. So people were just frustrated that they had to pay the licensing fee, even though they didn't get their license until March. This property actually rented January, February, and March. We didn't have any issue with them. We allowed them to do that. I just wanted to bring that out because there's some nuance on this one as we're implementing a new program. It's, the system we were hoping to have it up and running January. It wasn't. It took a little while to get up and running, but we are up and running. I would add to that system, Deckard, the online portal, is experiencing no issues. We have no issues with it now. People are using it. It's easy to use. And I would say too that we have conversations with STR owners and operators and the general public almost daily about the subject of STR regulations and general support. There's general support continuing to do these short-term rental registrations and licensing. I would also add that there were, I don't know off the top of my head, but at least 6 property owners I know of that didn't want to rent short-term any longer as we brought on the short-term rental registration requirements, and they were converting their properties back to year-round rentals for people that would claim primary residency there. And that's just some anecdotal evidence that I do have on that issue. That's what I have. If you have any questions for me, I'm here. I can answer them. It is, again, a new program, and I think we've worked out most all the bugs. On the septic side, we are working. I think if you remember, I went back and listened to that long hearing. Do you remember that long hearing? I think not all of you were on the board at the time, but it was a lengthy hearing. Stephanie French was on the board at the time. And I think we went line by line, if you remember. And the question on septics came up, how we were going to handle that. And I think at the time I said we were going to work with people, and we are working with people to get them their license. And they know before they get their new inspection for their next license, they will have to have expansion done. And I will tell you that there have been a handful of properties that have expanded their septic systems already, and just to comply with the state subsurface wastewater rules on STRs, which is good. Someone up on John Street, they put in it was a new house on John Street, and they put in a septic system for like 5 bedrooms, and it's a 3-bedroom home.
Are you kidding me? We're about to put the sewer there.
Not there, not on that side of John Street.
Okay. Where else on John Street is there?
There was
Only
a house
one
that
John
was
Street I
for
know
sale.
of.
What's
What?
that?
I only
All
know.
of John is not on sewer.
It's going,
Oh, yeah. I mean, they did this a year ago. As this was moving forward, they wanted to put in a new house. They needed sewer. I mean, they needed septic. They put in a septic system.
Now they're going to
And they knew
refuse to
that
hook
these
up to
short-term
them. Okay,
rental,
just I wouldn't.
they knew that these regulations were,
Maybe not a really great success story, but
Well,
because now they'll be like, we're not going to
they're
hook up.
complying with the septic rules
Okay.
is what we were
That's
intending to do, and they did. One on the ocean, down on Belfast Road, did the same thing, expanded his septic system because he knew it was coming, and he thinks it was appropriate too. He was concerned about his system and himself because of the constant use of tenants.
I'm sure there's endless stories
Yeah.
with all of these.
I have
Sure.
5 questions,
All right.
3 of which are all related.
Okay.
And the 3 related ones are related to fees. If I recall, there are different fees per type of defined unit, correct?
Mhm.
Was there any feedback that the town received based on different types of fees per the type of rental that were significant enough that we should reconsider our fees structure?
Was there any feedback that I've received? I think I received the same feedback that you probably received, and that was the feedback in a form of a letter that I think was addressed to the select board. That was the feedback that I received.
So that was just one piece.
Yeah, I mean, I think there were people, I think anytime you have a new fee and a new requirement, and you say a fee is $500 or $1,000 or $350, I think you get some people grumbling and, about it, but there was nothing put in writing, not a lot of frustration. I think, the service that we provide to do the inspections, to do the licensing, to do the ongoing monitoring is an appropriate fee. And I think we can have appropriate fees for appropriate uses. Not all of those uses are the same, right? The requirements are different. You have to have 24-hour contact on the commercial ones. So the information is a little different. It's generally the same, but there are some differences.
Okay.
Subtle. I will say subtle, but there are differences.
I've got a follow-up question that maybe we'll.
Can I add one more point to this? Is that commercial STRs, if that was you're going at, because that's the fee schedule is based on commercial, STR, residential.
Right.
We, in our zoning code, created a specific use called commercial STRs, residential STRs, and seasonal STRs. The commercial ones are considered by code, adopted by the town, commercial uses of those properties.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Overall, with the fees in this particular type of thing, and Audra may be a person to answer this as well, is the intent that the fees are really to make it cost neutral for the town?
I think the fees generally are providing the services that are needed to implement the license and the permitting, the inspections, and that goes what goes into that.
Can I
what I
tell you
mean
one big, huge cost that will never be
Mhm.
recuperated by the fees? Anytime we do any sort of infrastructure upgrade, whether it's pipelining, sewer replacement, road repaving, road rebuilding, you name it, anything happening in the town-owned public right-of-way, the biggest issue that we have to contend with every time, and I'm not exaggerating at all, are the STR issue. So that's not picked up in any of the work that Jeremy did to calculate out fees. The fees simply cover all of their office's work on this. It doesn't cover all the other issues that the town contends with that relate to STRs. So that's something that you could build into the cost, because it is the most significant issue that we contend with, are the constant negotiations, informing, re-informing the owners of these properties as to when a construction project is happening. They want to know very specific level of, when is the equipment going to be in front of my house? When, like, what are the exact dates? What are you doing? When are you doing it? So it's incredibly time consuming, and it adds a lot of additional work to every single public infrastructure upgrade project that we do.
Okay, thanks. The last group is 3 questions related with a very similar theme. As you mentioned already in your document, you had 151 units. And you mentioned then that 10 failed the inspection, right? Because that was one of my questions I'm self-answering, was how many failed? You said 10. And you mentioned that some of those folks are working on making improvements, which is a desired result, I would suspect. And then you said 4 ignored entirely. And what do we do about the 4 that ignored you entirely? What happens with that?
So what will happen in the future, I mean, again, this was the first year. And so how this worked is we have Deckard is sending out letters to STR owners saying, they got a first letter saying, hey, you've been identified, you have a STR, you're renting. The town of Camden has a licensing program. You need to register and go online. Here's a portal. That was the first letter. Second one went out like a month or 2 later, 90 days later, 45 days later. I don't remember exactly. And then the third one went out saying the same thing. And then unfortunately, starting in March, and then the months and the timing of the third letter campaign, and my enforcement letter, which was, I had a nasty letter, notice of violation letter, that those didn't get out until like October. And so it's like getting them to license something that they're going to be coming back in January 1st to have to license again. I mean, it was just it kind of got wonky timing wise. Yeah, I think there are like 4 that got away this year without licensing. And I will not, the plan is to not let that get to this point this year. I mean, we've already got at least 50 licensed renewals already. So we'll do that pretty rapidly. So in talking with Maddie today in my office, we think that by March of this year, we'll have back up to the 151 renewals, or 165. We'll get to 165 by March. And if someone hasn't registered by March of this year for something that was due in January, they'll be getting a notice of violation from me, and will come in, license it, pay an after the fact permit fee. And if they don't, then I'll be coming to you to ask the select board to continue enforcement action. That's either generally through a consent agreement or would be into district court.
Now, you mentioned there were 80 commercial.
Yeah.
Chris, so I know you were on the planning board during a lot of this that was going on. And I know that part of the intent there was also about affordable housing in this, maybe, no? I was wondering
One of
if
the aspects that
80
came up was about available housing.
Oh, that's it. That's it.
I don't think there's much affordability
Thank
happening
you.
right now.
Thank you for the clarification. You're right, with available housing. So was 80 what you expected, either of you? Was it less, more? Was it in the ballpark?
I mean, so initially we were getting, we had AirDNA do some numbers for us, and we had Granicus run some numbers for us. And it was this wide range, 200 to 400 STRs. That included everything that was on the on the short-term platform. So even if, the a bed and breakfast was having their units on Airbnb, or a hotel having their units on Airbnb, that showed up as a unique STR in Camden. So when we worked with Deckard pairing through these, we got down to 165 is what was actually real. And I figured that number was going to be higher than 165, but about 200 is what I thought it was going to be. And of those, I figured we were going to be at like 75% commercial, or 60 to 75% commercial. And we got 80 out of 151. So that's where we are.
I mean, I figured that, the numbers are similar to what I expected, because I also I think it's interesting that you have that number of several properties that have chosen to pull out. And I suspect that there may be a number of properties who never even, sort of saw it coming down the road and didn't, which was part of the hope. Like, so if 10 apartments get put back into the long-term year-round market, that's a good percentage of that number back.
I mean, I think it's important to realize and remember when the planning board was discussing all this and there were hearings on this, it was a whole host of issues that the reason to regulate short-term rentals, not just housing, it's taking away housing, right? I mean, that was one of the issues. But when you look at like police powers and like protecting public welfare, life safety, neighborhood, those are all legitimate reasons to regulate and land uses and allowed.
So I think as we did with the last agenda item, if there are any other comments. What? I'm just trying to be consistent with what we did with the last.
Are we done with select board questions or?
No, I mean, we did that after, didn't
Oh,
we?
okay,
We
sorry,
took
sorry,
questions from
sorry,
the-
sorry. Yep, you're
from
right.
the audience.
You're right.
Steve, would you like to add something if you would like to come, if you'd come forward, please?
I'm not sure that
You want me to-
we're walking up there. The first question is, of the 80 units that you're calling commercial, because this was certainly a discussion point, can you tell me the breakdown between those that are, sort of family-owned, Maine-oriented people who come up here, they own the house, but they spend time here, or it was their parents' house, and they do rent it out a few weeks a year, compared to the sort of scare technique that was used of properties being bought solely for the purpose of becoming short-term rent.
Don't go too far. All right. I'll answer that. And I don't have that information right in front of me, but we can certainly do some research and provide that for you.
Oh, well,
I mean,
like we have,
Go ahead.
we don't have all the time in the world to research every.
no, I realize
Right,
that. My
but-
second question is, what are the licensing fees for hotels, B&Bs, and inns?
Okay. Good question. I don't have them off the top of my head, but they are lower. And I would tell you that the select board is going to be getting a fee schedule proposed fee schedule from the town staff for all the things that we permit and license. And there is a need to up all of our licensing fees to cover the costs that it takes to do the inspections and the licensing and the administrative work for that work. So you will find, I mean, there was a time ago, I don't know, like 5 years ago, I think 6 years ago, that I think it was a bed and breakfast was
$30.
$30 or $11 plus $5 per room or something. That's what the licensing fee was forever. I would also add, just adding to Audra's point, and I'm bringing this up because of the fee schedule talk, the impact of infrastructure projects and doing sewer work. Bar Harbor plumbing fees, like to get a plumbing permit to do a fixture, it's $10 a fixture. Minimum fee is $40. That does not at all cover the cost of us to do the inspections, the administrative work, to do that licensing permit. Bar Harbor has a provision in their code that they have upped those, like the plumbing fees and the sewer connection fees, considerably to cover the cost, primarily because of, and all of the work that is required to do the sewer work in Bar Harbor, because of all the ledge and all the rock that's underground when they're doing sewer work. So they built a lot of that into plumbing fees and sewer fees. So I'm just pointing that out because I think it's important to know that at some point when we do the fee schedule, you're going to see fees going up for certain things, because a permit fee is supposed to pay for the work that is required to go into it.
Third point of the question.
Hold on, Steve.
All the permits that you stipulated gross the town $106,800, which doesn't strike me as being very cost effective for paying all the consultants that this started with, and this ongoing contract with whoever scrubs the internet. I think the current fee for a motel, an inn, et cetera, is $100. So there are some of us, 58 residential, I don't know the size of all those units, but we're paying $350, for what can be a 1-bedroom or studio.
Understood, Stephen. We are looking at, I am constantly looking at what municipalities are doing on the short-term rental fees. And again, I think we are going to be bringing forward a fee schedule in the next month or two for the select board, and there may be some changes in there. I understand your point. Someone with a very large home on Bayview that may have 8 bedrooms is paying the same fee as someone that may have 1 bedroom or a 2-bedroom home. I understand. So we are going to be looking at make sure there's equity and appropriate based on the work that goes into the permitting and the licensing.
Okay, we'll turn it over to the board and see, Alex.
Yeah, they can walk up, Jeremy. Yeah, because then the camera can catch them too. It's good for people to come up.
Hi, Alex Cohen, Camden. I didn't prepare anything because I didn't think this was a public hearing, but since, the prior issue, caused this all to happen. I didn't, I think where I stand, and I think the letters I've been sending over years have tried to outline a lot of the pitfalls that I think we find ourselves in right now relative to, unfortunately, a well-intentioned effort to try and stimulate some housing. Initially, Chris, it was trying to stimulate affordable housing. That was the mandate from somewhere, and it got kind of, redefined as available housing because we all pretty much agree that there's nothing that's particularly affordable. But, I've tried to talk about this in all different ways, and I've tried to talk to all you guys, and, and I've had to resort to kind of taking it up a step because I feel strongly about this, and it's my livelihood. It's what I've been doing for 25 years. I'm in real estate, I'm in rentals. And we have a problem with housing. The whole state does. But this ordinance is doing nothing to help. It's causing our town resources. It's a distraction. Clint doesn't need to go around inspecting houses. And Jeremy could maybe work towards developing, housing in town and not chasing around septic permits or whatever. I mean, so it's just frustrating to me as a taxpayer, someone who knows this business backwards and forwards. I know, I'm sorry to say, I know more than all the planning board members and the select board throughout this whole issue. And I tried to sort of impart my wisdom, even though I had a different approach or different opinion, but no one really cared to listen to it. No one cared to talk to the Midcoast Board of Realtors or, people in the rental space, on the water. I mean, there was just never an effort to sort of engage with the people that knew what this issue was all about. And so that's kind of my frustration. It's really just about wasting time and all this effort for years. Is there any appreciable advancement in housing in our town? I don't think so. What we have are fees and consultants and Jeremy coming up here and talking to you guys and writing memos and you guys hearing from me and me doing what I need to do. And it's just exasperating. And I just wish we could get it right and do things that will make a difference and not penalize people disproportionately because they live somewhere else but pay taxes here on their property. And that was a major thrust of why I thought this was a rotten effort from the beginning, because it was creating these types of property owners, those who live here full-time and those who simply have a second home here, but really identify as living here, some more than others. But it's a real big leap when these definitions were created and developed by the planning board and a kind of, assumed to be the gospel and true. And we take this commercial short-term rental person and commercial is derogatory, and they're just simply
Madam Chair,
there's
a lot to
Gold's point.
Alex, I need to interrupt
just let me
you're
finish.
saying a lot of things which are not true.
I don't get a
and you're
chance. I don't get a chance to speak.
You have spoken
I don't
many,
get a chance to
many
speak.
times.
I don't get a chance to
You are a
speak.
participant in many meetings on these
I don't get a
issues.
chance to speak as much as you or the rest of the planning board. So what I was saying, Steve was mentioning how many of those commercial short-term renters, are these corporations or what have you. Jeremy didn't know the answer because there really aren't any. It's a fool's errand. Most of the commercial people are simply, they're people that don't live here, that might have a family home, or they're people that want to move here and retire here. Or me. It's a house that I bought when I first moved here. I'm going to give it to my kids. It's not my primary residence, but I'm going to hold on to that house and give it to my kids. So I'm sorry. I haven't had an opportunity to speak about this. I've written letters. I've done my civic duty, Chriso. I've been polite. I've come. The planning board chair doesn't even live in town anymore, and another guy's gone too. It's like the Chamber of Commerce doesn't exist anymore, and they were a big proponent of this and touting a letter that was written by people that don't even live in the town. It's a rotten ordinance. It's flawed, and it doesn't do anything. And you guys should do the right thing.
Message received. Thank you. Allison.
I just want to say that having listened and been a part of this for at least 9 years of being on the select board, you have had an enormous impact on this ordinance, Alex, an enormous impact. And on me personally, on other board members that some of them are not here anymore, the advocacy that you and others engaged in dramatically altered the recommendations of the planning board, of the select board at many different moments. Many communities are putting a cap. That is the recommendation from many communities. Rockland is 50 or something. The planning board initially started with a recommendation on having a cap. because of the advocacy that from you and others, we completely got rid of the cap. And what this is a compromise. And so that is what's been very frustrating to me in this, is that I felt like I had people that were really frustrated with me for caving on the short-term rental ordinance. And a lot of people make really good arguments about why it should have been much stronger and why there should be caps, why fees should be higher, why there should be absolutely no unhosted or, so to speak, commercial ones allowed. This was a major compromise. We could revisit the cap. I understand that you don't think that some of the fees are fair, but the process is that everybody thinks things are unfair in different ways. And so there are a lot of different ways we could do it. I just want you to know that I've seen you have a very, very big impact. And if you look at what other communities have done that are very similar to us, this one allows much more activity to continue. So.
Can I just say one thing? And I have no, ill will at all towards Alex. He and I really never sat down and had conversations about this issue. But when he stands here and he says Clint should not be out doing inspections of these things, and Clint goes out and does an inspection and he sees that people are trying to put bedrooms where there's no egress windows, that is precisely one of the reasons why we have this program and why Clint is doing those inspections. That is a serious life safety issue. I think everyone understands what happened on Mount Batty Street a number of years ago. That was someone sleeping in a building, in a space that did not have an egress window. It was an illegal space to be sleeping in. And so we cannot have that. And that is one of the reasons why we do this. Just pointing that out.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything specific that you would like from us at this point, or are we?
No, I mean, I think there's always room for tweaks as we move things along, and I'll bring them forward to you, I think, as needed. I do think on the enforcement side, if you can be supportive of moving forward with enforcement action as may be needed.
That's
Our
really
intent.
important.
It
Like, I'm
is.
really concerned because the history of the town sometimes is not doing that part. And I know it's a real drag to have to bring things to us. And maybe we can find ways to bundle things. But what I've heard from people is some frustration of feeling like they complied and they come up with examples where they feel like somebody else hasn't. And I just want to make sure that we really are on top of that, because a lot of people
I
don't comply.
appreciate that.
Okay, thank you,
That's all I
Jeremy.
have. Yep. Thanks.
All right, let's move on to the acquisition of the common lot in the Greenfield subdivision.
All right, so I'm gonna take you on a journey in the Wayback Machine to 2023.
Just
So
as a quick point of order, to Chris's point earlier, we have this under discussion items, but at the tail end of it, you're asking us to put it on a warrant item.
yes, so I don't need any formal vote on that because you wouldn't see it again until you
Just
vote
don't
on
want
the
us to
warrant.
go all the way down that.
Yeah,
path
yeah,
at
no,
this
that
point.
is
Yeah,
a
is
fair
it-
point
is
to
it-
bring up.
Just like a move in
Move
that
forward.
direction.
Yeah,
Right.
just making sure that you're okay with that. So back in 2003, at town meeting, voters approved authorizing the select board to accept the conveyance of title of, I don't believe it was just a strip of land. I think it was the entire sort of common lot area in the Greenfield subdivision for the purpose of establishing a multi-use pedestrian and bicycle pathway, as well as taking over responsibility for the stormwater retention pond in that subdivision. So that was approved by voters. It passed unanimously, overwhelmingly approved by voters. And we don't exactly know why, but the town never really moved forward with the ministerial act of, accepting and filing the deed or executing it and recording it. So as a result, the town doesn't hold legal title to the common lot or the pathway area, despite the overwhelming support at the 2003 town meeting. So, it does matter now. The stormwater infrastructure, as you can imagine, has really degraded since that time. That entire retention pond is clogged up with vegetation, because the town doesn't own the land and because there was a lot of ambiguity over this over the years. Like the former owner of the subdivision believed that the town had recorded the deed, so they didn't do any maintenance to it. So there's been a lot of neglect over the years of that infrastructure, and it's very unclear who's responsible for doing that. So that's, for the stormwater reasons, I think it's important that we revisit this again. There's also the public access and connectivity issue. So the major thrust behind this in 2003 was because of that, ability to have that pathway that connects all the way through to Rockport. And so that, that is still a goal of the town. Jeff Scott from the Pathways Committee is here. That's been a long-standing project that the town has wanted to move forward on with our neighbors. And formal ownership would allow us to clarify all those public access rights as well as improve that area for pedestrians. And then work towards that, the broader goal of integrating that area with the larger corridor that would give, an option for non-vehicular transportation through that area all the way to Rockport.
YMCA.
To the YMCA, yep. And so, also the legal clarity and governance concerns. So, voter authorization without recorded title, just a lot of ambiguity as far as what we're going to do. So really a clean way to solve this would be to put it before voters again at the 2026 town meeting.
And then actually do it.
And then actually move forward with recording the deed.
So you are looking to us to direct town staff to continue on with the research and preparation of a prospective warrant article.
Correct. I didn't want the first time that we ever talked about this to be when we were talking about the 2026 warrant for town meeting.
Right. Any comments from the board regarding this?
Yeah, thanks. So it seems pretty clear. I tried to read this closely, but it seems to me that the 2003 acceptance was for this strip of land, and that's done. I mean, we could authorize that and carry through on that there is no need to have yet another vote on something that was already voted in 2003. So that the addition that you're asking for this year would be for the retention pond and common area, which is not part of the 2003 vote. Does that clarify?
It's everything because, since we didn't move forward with, filing the deed in the registry, it's kind of like a stale, it's an awkward thing for us to bring up again, more than 20 years later. So it's kind of getting that reauthorization from voters.
But it's two different authorizations. One is for the strip of land, which is for the pathway, and the other one is for the, I mean, that's
Are you saying doing them together?
That's what I'm asking. It sounds to me like that's what you're going for.
That's what I'm proposing, that we do it as one.
I want to point out that we don't need to do anything to claim that strip of land. It's already got the quitclaim deed and the authorization from the town. But if we want to go to the town, what we'll be asking for is for the town to acquire somebody else's common property and retention pond that rightfully the burden of maintaining that belongs with the developer, not with the town. So that's my concern, that we're conflating these two different deeds, these two different properties, one of which has already been okayed. And I want to be clear as we move forward that if it does appear on the town warrant that it is for this common area, including I'm assuming that it's including the retention pond.
It would be for all of it. So it'd be for the strip as well as the retention pond, or sorry, the common lot with the retention pond on it.
I actually think there were, if you may do a little bit more research, there were actually a couple votes. I found a letter to the editor actually from Jeff Scott in the early mid 2000s that was explaining to voters why they had to go back again to ask voters again, because they wanted more than just the originally identified strip. But so in terms of, if you're concerned that the intent of voters at the time was only a strip and now they're requiring a liability,
Yes.
I didn't, the impression from the letters to the editor at the time, certainly to me, was that it was expanding it to the whole lot. In that case, there is actually no homeowners association, and we acquired the road. So I would argue a little bit with Audra about the idea that there has to be a lot of maintenance on that stormwater pond. It's kind of like a wetland back there, and I wouldn't necessarily be supportive of the town just like going in and trying to get that, all the trees out and stuff. I think it's a whole wetland area that we would ideally kind of leave as it is. But if we have these orphan parcels around that nobody has ownership of because the homeowners association doesn't exist and the town acquires the road, to me, we really need to own those parcels so that if we want to do things with them related to stormwater in the future, we can. So I would see it kind of as more of a liability to leave it
I'd say
hanging.
this is kind of like we're going to.
I don't think we're offering to do a bunch of work, like doing it
No.
and then doing a bunch of work to this stormwater pond. It actually seems to be kind of functioning okay as a overgrown
Well, I would
wetland.
just say generally with stormwater infrastructure, so it's quite common that, you'll have like a subdivision, you'll have like a stormwater system, whether it's a retention pond or something else. And, it becomes integrated in a common lot that's owned by the subdivision. And sometimes there's an HOA managing it, sometimes there isn't. But invariably, we've got 3 different examples of this happening in Camden. I'm sure there's maybe more that we don't know about, where they're just kind of orphaned and abandoned. And the problem is we take over responsibility for the roads. We say stormwater, the HOA or whoever owns the subdivision has to keep the stormwater system. Well, the stormwater system is part of the road infrastructure. And if it's not maintained, you're going to have problems with your roads and your streets. So we're really, by decoupling these things, we've really done ourselves a disservice in areas where we could have prevented degradation of our road infrastructure. We weren't able to because we didn't own the stormwater infrastructure that was protecting the road system.
Is there a way in the future when subdivisions applications come in that it be structured so that this problem does not exist? Because it's coming up again and again and again.
Yeah. And this isn't unique to us either. This happens everywhere.
But not all of them are actually a liability. In some cases, there's like just the common area or common spaces, an asset that really should go when the town takes over responsibility for the road. I feel like the public should gain access to the common asset too. I do think this one is a little different because it's not this huge problem at the moment, whereas some of the other ones are problems that require somebody to immediately deal with. That's not really the case with this
Okay,
one.
so we will look for next steps on this one.
Yes, so the next time you see this, if you're all in agreement that this is worth putting in front of voters again, would be that it would be a warrant article for the 2026 town meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, I have reservations about the town acquiring this property, so that.
But that'll be a
The
conversation.
discussion.
That'll be a
Exactly.
conversation when it
Yeah.
gets to that point. Okay. Let's move on quickly.
Oh.
I mean, are we sure, Jeff Scott,
Oh.
Camden, Chair of the Pathways Committee. Thank you, Susan. Are we sure that we have to have,
Yes.
we're sure that we have
We're
to have
sure.
this vote again?
Yeah, we're sure.
That's it. Thanks.
Okay. we're going to vote on the renewal of the license agreement with McGonagall Rowing.
So moved.
You've got that?
Second.
You've got-
Unless I should be more responsible. They look pretty much the same, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see any issue there,
They've been great partners.
and great.
I do know there are people here to speak in favor
Oh.
of it who waited, but I don't.
Where they want to,
You all want to speak in favor?
great job.
Thanks for coming.
Oh, I
Your
feel, but I didn't know that. Okay.
benefit to the community. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion from the board?
Yeah, what are the negatives of passing this?
Maybe there aren't any.
Few more rowboats on the lake sometimes, but
I
most
mean,
people.
what does this effectively, in simple terms, enable them to do?
Continuing operating on a small corner of. the
Using that
cove
space for boat storage and launching
So
the
it's the
rowing
storage of the
program.
boats
And
Yeah.
accessing the pond, the lake.
So
at a
there's-
public spot.
Mhm.
There's a pathway that leads from the parking lot down through what used to be woods down to the shore. Do I have that
Yes.
accurate? Okay.
Yep.
It's still mostly woods. They,
Yeah,
right. They're not going to cut down any more trees or anything. Or
right. It says that
It's just the same
specifically.
as it's been for
Mhm.
the great program.
So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you for, I hope you found this
Join a town committee now that you know.
a crash course in civics enlightening, edifying. I told you you could have watched and come down at the last minute. We talked about this, but,
Impressive discussion. You have a select board meeting that I've ever been.
oh, well,
Oh,
we appreciate
well,
hearing that.
This
That's
one we
great
just had, it
feedback.
was pretty great.
Here we go.
The vote on
This
this,
has
the
been-
vote on this agreement,
a good
that was the
one.
most.
Well, thank you for what you do too.
Know about the precautionary principle. It's impressive.
There you go. There you go.
Excuse me, Susan, I do have one administrative clarification that I wonder if we're going to do.
Okay.
You had mentioned as part of your decision, a letter that the select board had received on drift. Is that letter that the select board received from Mr. Podolsky, is that going to be then part of the packet somehow?
If you
think
would,
you
if
read
you'd
it.
like it to be, I can.
He
Yeah.
didn't, no, he didn't read that letter. He read something else.
Well,
It's
he
similar
read
to that.
most of, yeah. We
I
could,
just
we could
didn't know
definitely
if-
make it part of the record. Sure.
Yeah. So you know how Jeff asked to put the PowerPoint in?
Yes.
We can also put the letter in.
Because there's another letter as well about drift that it speaks to the certification, or I don't know the right term, but the
Oh, from
the
Marina.
labeling. There's also a request there, or a letter to the select board about that.
Mhm.
That might be an informative piece.
Sure.
Since it was provided, we could add, that if it's possible,
Sure.
to add that to the packet.
If we've got it, it can go in. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, and now our final action item is the vote to award the bid for the Snow Bowl gable and wall. And we've got the bids. Maple Street Design is here.
Did we
And-
just switch the order? I'm sorry, of the last two
What's
No,
that?
it's these last
No,
two.
This is the
this
last
We're
is
on
it.
B.
We're moving along in the right order.
A,
I have A, B, and C. Do you not have A, B, and C?
Just
We have A and B.
Oh,
There is no C.
Oh, was that the other? Well, that was changed.
Yeah,
so-
there was,
Yeah.
there was,
how am I supposed to know that the agenda has been changed? I mean, I don't know when I printed this out, but it was printed out since I received it.
Oh, my apology. Next time we'll send an email when we change it.
Anytime there's a change.
Yes.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
Okay, let's take up this item.
Jeff Nathan, Camden Parks and Recreation. Back in January 21, we talked about the need to replace the window wall. We've gone through the process of getting it approved, up through the authorization from the town for $350,000. We went through an RFP process, a bid process. We had 4 companies respond successfully to the bid. Using a 40-point scale, 10 points for each of the categories, we said we would be measuring in the RFP time frame of the work, relevant experience, completeness of bid package, and cost, we assign a point value to each. And the bid packets themselves, the bid responses were included in the select board packet. Jeremy and I reviewed each of the packets thoroughly, as did Joe Rosillo, who we had hired from Maple Street Architecture, who's really been managing Maple Street Design Studio, excuse me, been managing the RFP process for us. We all came to the same conclusion that based on the point distribution, Blaine Casey is our recommendation to be awarded the bid. Their package was extremely thorough. Their cost was the lowest. They have experience with this specific product and with the Sierra Pacific, who is designing the product. So that's our recommendation. I'm excited to get this thing started.
Jeff, can you just specify what the product is and what the process of this job will be?
So the specific job entails removing the window wall, the curtain wall that's on the mountainside of the lodge, safely removing that and installing a curtain wall system designed by Sierra Pacific that will replace the window wall that's there. It will make it safer and more structurally resilient and allow us to continue to operate into the future with the existing lodge.
But so Sierra is the vendor who is basically producing the windows that will get.
That's correct, Chris. Yep. So I don't want to say it's an elaborate Lego set, but it's similar where it's designed and then designed and built offsite, will be delivered and then constructed by Blaine Casey at the Snowball.
And it will look the same. It will be that nice, big, wide open.
It will look very similar. We're going to move the doors to one of the sides so that we can have more floor space in the middle of the room.
Great.
And the window pattern design is a little bit different. We went with a little bit smaller panes as an expense cost savings. So it'll look primarily very similar to what exists now. It'll still be a window wall, but it'll look slightly different than what's there today.
And the frame will be metal rather than wood. I'm just guessing. I don't.
Framing is, and Joe, help me out, composite wood. Yeah, it's a composite wood, right? Or wood.
It's a glue lamb type of structure, so it's very wood looking.
Wood looking.
It's wood looking wood.
Here we go. Wood looking wood, like wood. All right. Can I have a motion to accept the proposal, the bid from Blaine Casey Contractors for the window wall replacement? Do I have a second?
No second.
Any further discussion?
I do have a question about how does it work as far as moving the doors left or right? How does that help? How does that help traffic flow and floor space?
So today,
it's in the middle, right?
It's in the middle. It's directly down the center of the room. By putting it on the side closest to where ticketing and rentals is, we get it out of the middle of the room, which reduces traffic flow through the dead center, largest area of the lodge. We're also installing double doors so that depending on how the wind's blowing, we can open the correct door to help manage the heat loss within the building.
And that will line up with the stairs.
Yes.
So that line of traffic will go from the stairs straight to that door and leave the other.
That's correct.
Section.
So you're moving the tables a little bit, I guess, right?
Yeah, we've talked about table design and also potentially putting some bar top tables down that end of the room as well.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Susan.
You're one for two.
Come today.
Yes, thank you also for making the trip. We look forward to working with you and hope there's a successful, expeditious project. Thank you.
How are we coming with the redesign for this room, Joe?
We're talking
Okay, I just figured I'd
Kind of
just
put them on
throw it out
hold a little
there.
bit. while we
Snowball is
got-
way more fun.
The snowball is more fun, but this is kind of the vibe here, could be improved.
All right, can I have a motion to?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there an executive session?
After adjournment.
Oh, okay.
Don't we go into executive session
Yes,
and
we
then
actually
adjourn?
do. Yeah,
So
that is
we-
the time.
Right. I guess we adjourn this meeting and open executive session.
Well.
Well, it's the same
no,
meeting, it's just that
actually
we're
the same
moving
meeting.
into executive
Yes,
session.
thank
is
you.
the-
So I would move that we enter into executive session
I'll second that.
pursuant to the correct,
MRS 4056C, consult with legal counsel.
yes. And then I think we have a second.